now green flag racing from the circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia.
Having taken the lead in the race, you can see how tight it is. Oh, a little bit of contact between the two VRS cars. Oh, that is it. Lego Technic Esports up to the front. Collins to the race lead. Collins has taken over the race lead, getting by Mac Backen. By the way, Kova's going for a move to grab fourth from Bieler. There it is. Just caught that on the other screen. So Thomas Tattler gets up into fourth.
Down the inside comes the number 91 car. Going to be fought by the Lego car. De Jong makes a mistake. That gives Kova the podium position. It's Dane Warren, it's Charlie Collins for the second race in a row. They will take the checkered flag. Here we go, already a car onto the grass, and we are underway to hill through turn 9. This is really kicking off.
Oh, there's been a contact ahead between Antinez and the Valkyrie car, Kenny Rooston. I'm not actually sure what happened, but now McFarlane's going to try and take advantage of all of it. As the Arnage car gets sent off into the gravel trap, it's Pure Sim 2 coming through the middle of it. They're going to rejoin, and Valkyrie is sent spinning.
Pokes his nose to the inside, down he goes. It's Dane Warren to the pointy end of things. Once more, we see a Coanda car getting loose through turn 1. Here we go, though. Brienne is rocking and rolling. You can see he is moving and ready for this pass. It will be the checkered flag for the 91. It's Coanda taking 3 victories in a row.
The triple header comes to a close here from Circuit Zolder as the SCO Sprint Masters continues for race weekend number 3 in its 2021 campaign. What an exciting 4 races we've already seen, but with 2 hours still to go before the halfway point and a 1-month-long summer break, who will carry some championship momentum in towards the month of August. Hello and welcome back to RaceSpotTV and the other track in Belgium. Circuit Zolder, such a historic track. Formula One last visited this place back in the 1980s. And obviously, a lot of people will associate Formula One and Spa with the Belgian Grand Prix, but no, this is a track with so much different heritage. My name is Arjuna Kangipati, delighted to be joined, as always, by Lewis McLeod, with Hugo Luis down in the production booth, controlling all of the action. And Lewis, we saw some excitement yesterday as the SCO Sprint Challenge came here with the GT4 cars. The GT3s are ready to rumble. We are minutes away from qualifying for race number 5.
Yeah, you can't tell me you can't race around Circuit Zolder. We were seeing 3 wide, not once, but twice. And that was coming out of the turn 5 chicane. It was fantastic action all the way throughout the race. I expect we're going to see very similar things here. But is it going to be VRS Coanda against VRS Coanda, or are Kova going to be back in the mix, or maybe even someone else?
And well, BOP is always such an intriguing talking point in a championship like this. And well, the Ferrari has not necessarily seen the best of luck so far in this season. The prancing horse might be looking very strong over the curbs here at Circuit Zolder. Let's talk very briefly about the schedule before diving into the rest of our pre-show, because really, Hockenheim and Barcelona, what fun we had there. And we really do have a 1-month long summer break after this, Lewis. It's going to feel a little bit weird. Of course, we do have the VRS SCO 24 Hours of Spa to get to as well. But on the other side of this, Monza, Red Bull Ring, and then a trip to one of the shortest tracks, not just in our calendar here, but across of the iRacing service at the Nürburgring and the sprint layout. That is going to be a championship fight. 6 more races still to go after this one here today.
Yeah, ending the season on what is the shortest layout of the season at the Nürburgring Sprint Strecke. They're very different circuits when you think of how the start of the season's been. We're talking of a Grand Prix level circuit, and then we're coming to one of these short, tight and twisty tracks. It's very similar to what happens in the second half of the season when we do Monza, Red Bull Ring, and then head into a much shorter track. It spices it up, it keeps it different, but this is it where we have, if anyone has any issues right now leaving Zolder, they can rectify those in a month-long break and have a bit of a breather and come back stronger.
And it's such a fun format. We've been saying it over the course of the season. Really no place to hide because 2 races, 2 qualifying sessions, and drivers have to split qualifying duties as well as start responsibilities over the course of the weekend. So should be a lot of fun. Someone like Carly Jansen, I was chatting with him last night, or I guess this morning for him, because obviously time zones are a thing. He'll be in competition later today in the ISOWC racing in a Dallara IR18 in the Indy cars. He's going to be starting race number 2 to make sure he makes it in time for qualifying in that ISOWC race. You can take a look at this format. It's so much fun. 60 minutes of action with a mandatory driver change. And this, Lewis, is the one place we've talked about pit entry being crucial both at the Hockenheim Ring and Circuit Barcelona. But this, we saw Biela Racing Team really making a huge mistake on the entry last time around. I think we're going to see that a bit more here today.
Certainly saw that yesterday. For anyone who was catching the action yesterday, there was a team with the championship leaders at that point. RaceFox coming into pit lane, they were directly behind someone, made contact with the Simars T77 car. It's one of those things where the pit entry is on the racing line, but if you're entering pit lane at full speed, you brake much, much later. And of course, in racing here in action here today, Marius Gollenbeck was driving the car at that point and committed to the pit lane, and then there was a bit of confusion ahead, nearly caused an enormous crash. It's a very, very difficult pit lane, but if you nail it, trust me, you can gain so much time.
And what are these drivers fighting over? It is one of the largest prizes in any private GT3 league we've seen here on the iRacing service. $25,000 on the line, the point structure that will be familiar to those who are MotoGP fans. And of course, Lewis, the greatest thing is these prizes shared amongst 2 drivers, so the number you see on screen, cut that in half, but it does mean that every point really matters in a championship like this.
Yeah, especially with it being quite tight and stuff. We're talking of a large prize pool, $25,000. It's an enormous prize pool they're playing to. And at the moment this season, we've seen a lot of those points shared out between the VRS SCO and the SimSport team. And realistically, it's been a bit of a shock in that front, Arjuna, where we've seen the 93. We were more expecting the 91 to be at the front, Mitchell de Jong and Josh Rogers. But Dane Warren, Charlie Collins, they have been in control this season.
And you see that in the points 30 between the 93 and Kova, who are actually tied with the 91. Joshua Rogers and Mitchell de Jong picking up their first victory on the season last time around. The momentum is swinging in favor of the 91, but the 93 car has been oh so unflappable in the opening 4 hours of action. PS competition, we always love to see the Zebras consecutive podiums in the second race on the weekend over the course of our first 2 weekends. Lego Technic in 5th, for the Apex Racing Lamborghini 6th and 7th. So much strength in this field. But I tell you what, we have had the privilege of riding around with first Joshua Rogers and last time Jamie Fluke to get a sense of the track. This time we caught up with the Porsche Tagore Esports Super Cup driver Sindre Setzels to take a look at Belgium's Circuit Zolder.
Hi and welcome to the VRS Circuit Walk for race 3 of the VRS SCO Sprint Masters at Zolder. I am VRS driver coach Sindre Setzels, driver of the number 31 Mercedes AMG GT3 for Core Sim Racing. Zolder is one of the smaller tracks on the schedule at just over 4 kilometers in length, with some of the shortest straights on the entire schedule. Passing will be at a premium, so qualifying will be hugely important. Join me as I look at some of the interesting corners and challenges that the drivers will face at Zolder. Turn 5 and the first chicane is one of the trickiest corners on the schedule. You need to pick your line very carefully and carry as much speed as you can for the run to turn 6. That means bouncing both curves and being able to stick the landing. This requires precise placement of the car by all the drivers and completely dialed in suspension setup to keep traction on the landing. Turn 7, the second chicane at turn 7 is deceivingly tricky. It's not easy to consistently spot how much you can cut lap on lap. Plus it's bumpy at the apex, so you have to place the car perfectly, all while getting the throttle down for the run to the hairpin. Turn 8 and the hairpin itself is quite straightforward. It's a tight hairpin, pretty straightforward, but it's likely also the best passing area. With it being tight though, it's quite easy to defend, but that might open up a move into the final chicane. The final chicane itself is again pretty straightforward. However, it's the pit entry here that is an interesting choke point. Cars taking the chicane will likely be braking much earlier than the ones trying to get onto pit lane. Getting caught up in traffic will probably lose you about a second on time on entry to the pit lane if you were to get stuck behind a car that's taking the normal line in the final chicane. So this will be one of the most important races to time your pit entry so you don't lose too much time in the race. Now let's queue up the VRS onboard and ride a lap around Zolder. So we're here at Zolder, heading out of the final corner onto the front stretch. Moving over to the right hand side of the track before turn 1, braking right before the coke barriers on the right ends, and then turn into the corner, hit the curb on the inside, and use the curb on the outside and move swiftly over to the left hand side of the track before braking immediately and then turning into the right hander. Use the curb on the outside, don't need to track out to the curb on the inside, and just use the curb on the inside to minimize the distance traveled. Brake at the exit road on the left and then turn it into the right hander. Use all the curb on the inside and the outside to maximize the corner speed. And then we're heading into the first chicane, braking at about 75 meters down to third gear. Use both curbs on the left and right side and then run it all over the hill, full throttle. Move over to the left hand side before opening up the second chicane and then using both curbs here as well. Use as much as you can, especially on that left hand side, to get the exit you want, and then full throttle out and over this crest right here, and then move over to the left hand side of the track, brake at 100 meters, down through the gears, low speed, probably the best overtaking spot on the circuit, and then full throttle out of the hairpin, run towards the final chicane. We'll start braking between the 100 meter board and the bridge. Nibble at the first curb and then use all of the second curb, run it all the way out to the curb on the exit, and then move slowly over to the right hand side to open up turn 1 for the next lap of Zolder. Hope you all enjoyed this edition of the VRS Sprint Masters track walk from Zolder. Be sure to tune in this Saturday for round 3 of the series, and I hope to see you all there.
So great to hear from Sindre about this wonderful track. For those who have watched over the last couple of weeks, we've caught up with some of the drivers about their thoughts, hearing some engine noises from them as well. We got some new responses from the drivers, so let's go hear from some of the grid themselves.
Hey. Back when we had the Blancpain World Championship Series on iRacing, so I think that was 5, 6, 7 years ago. So back then it was with the BMW Z4, but yeah, we spent quite a few years actually racing in this series.
I have some experience, but it's not the most recent experience, let's put it that way.
I have a lot of experience on GT3 just because it's one of my favorite categories, and it's a kind of racing that I like the most because it's always so close and with many manufacturers together, and yeah, I really like it, GT3, and I'm looking forward to have a good season.
Not that much. Obviously you have the bigger races like Spot 24 hours, maybe some other special events. Also I've done the Digital Nürburgring Endurance Championship where we finished second in GT3 class. So that was a good achievement, and hopefully we can carry that into this championship as well.
Favorite track on schedule, that has to be Monza.
My favorite track on the calendar is for sure Nürburgring. And then I think for the car itself, it's gonna be Monza and Zolder. I think those are gonna be the better tracks for the car. Obviously it's very good over curbs, but it lacks a bit with ABS and the turn-in and stuff like that. So
favorite track, that's a tough one, but I think I'm quite impatient to go racing on the Red Bull Ring because it's going to be the first time, and I'm really curious to see how it's going to go.
Well, this season have a lot of good tracks, but if I have to choose one, without doubt will be the Nürburgring. So yeah, that's my choice. It's my favorite track of the calendar.
yeah, let's go.
Right, the sound of the M4 GT3, our car. That's it.
Obviously this was a Mercedes-AMG GT3.
And well, shout out to Randy Cheneth who did all the editing there as well. Always putting a touch of humor into these videos. Great to hear from some of the drivers. Antti Ahola, of course, had to miss the last couple of rounds. Reserve driver Pekka Toivonen really did step up. Unfortunate speeding penalty last time at Barcelona kind of hindered the chances for Kova, but let's see what the BMW from the Finnish outfit can do. A reminder, you can enter yourself to win one of 6 LEGO Technic Porsche 911 RSR kits by visiting giveaway.sportscaropen.com. You can also get yourself entered for a season-long giveaway of the VRS Direct Force Pro wheelbase. And, well, shout out to LEGO, because me and Lewis McLeod, we've been promising a bit of a LEGO battle, and, well, we did indeed get our own one of these kits. So a reminder, enter yourself in. These are wonderful. And, Lewis, you were saying that maybe add a week to your build time, so I think you're already conceding in this build-off right about now.
We'll see. We shall see. I'm just trying to think. Oh, you know, I don't need to take any time. My name's Artuna. I can pace myself. Meanwhile, I'll be there in the back, just putting everything together.
Well, under promise, over deliver. We'll see how it goes, and we'll post on social media, and hopefully we'll have those built in time for the next time we go racing from Monza in the middle of August. Qualifying is underway. Let's go take a look at our driver wall, because as always, we have onboard looks with every single one of these drivers, and you can see the different emotions. Some drivers already behind the wheel for qualifying. Others of them, are well and truly sitting back and letting their teammate do the hard work, at least for now. You can see top of the screen, Zach Campbell and Cooper Webster. They're out on track for the qualifying duties. And with 5 minutes already done, we've got some times coming in. But really, the interesting thing to me, Lewis, and you and I had kind of talked about it before we came on air, is first, Logitech Gioltas, they missed out last time around due to real-world commitments with racing. They topped the practice session by 1.5 tenths, and well, the entire field only separated by 0.7 of a second.
It's such a short lap time. Obviously, the shortest lap time we've seen thus far in the season, and that's where things are going to be quite interesting around. It's where we're going to see a very, very tight qualifying session. Of course, what you'd expect. Just to give a bit of a note then on that lap time, because we can see lap times improving. We're in the early stages of the session right now. Apex Racing Team head to the top of the session with Kevin Ellis Jr. The lap time set in that practice session you were alluding to by Logitech Gioltas Esports with a 26.731. So we're expecting them to find another 3 tenths. It's a hard track to nail a lap though around this one, isn't it, Arjuna? It's one where you really need to open the session by putting in a couple of bank laps and building yourself into that session.
It is, and the one thing that really stood out to me, I was just taking a second look at the practice time. At one point, it was Coanda's second, third, and fourth, the 91, the 18, and then the 93, the 18 being one of the Mercedes that they have in this field. But Inex Racing, who some will remember had a bit of a flip last time around at Barcelona as they went 3 wide on the main straight, they sat in second in the practice, so 126.890. It was 8 thousandths between them and the 91 car, Mitchell de Jong and Joshua Rogers. Let's see if the Ferraris have a bit of a better run. You can see Core have 2 Ferraris behind. I was talking to Carl Janssen last night, and he was saying the curves really do suit this Ferrari. It's a bit unsure why, because I always thought the Ferrari was a bit of a nervous Nelly when it came to those curves, but nevertheless, they've dialed it in very nicely, and well, 12 minutes left to go. The times are 1:27.040 is the fastest one. And let's kind of touch on weather very briefly here, Lewis, because in the first couple of rounds, what we did see was the temperature decrease over the course of the 2 races. This time around, it's going to be slightly different because We're just about touching 10 a.m. in the virtual Belgium at this point in time. It's 18 degrees in the air, 23 on the track, and well, it's just going to heat up as we go through. First race number 1, then qualifying 2, and then of course race 2 as well.
Yeah, we saw a roughly 7 or 8 degree increase yesterday between race 1 and race 2. Like I said, we normally see them decrease. I mean, think back to Barcelona where race number 1 was done in the early afternoon, and race number 2 was done in the early evening, was done up towards about 7 o'clock. We were almost talking of sun setting at that point in the race. It didn't set, so we were close enough though. And obviously at that point the track temperature is decreasing, whereas here, where the second race is going to be a little bit past midday, more approaching 1 o'clock, to the in-sim time, you're going to see a warmer track, which means that obviously we've always spoken of the races do favour different cars. It's not as if we're just hitting the reset button and doing the same thing again. We're going to see some cars, the ones that are a bit more nervous, they're going to struggle a little bit more in that second race, just courtesy of the track temperature going a little bit higher. It's not going to get ridiculous, but it's just going to increase a little bit.
That's right on board with RAG and Julian Sonnen coming down in towards turn number 2. It's VRS Coanda now second and third. I must say, from Kevin Ellis Jr., it was a very impressive qualifying lap time. Let's see if it will hold. It's still 11 minutes to go. You can see that this is why we're not the professional sim drivers, Lewis. These guys are so calm as Inex goes up to third. Whenever I'm driving, I'm a lot more flustered, and it's my teammates who have to actually calm me down when we're talking in the voice chat. This is totally different. This is full focus. This is full commitment.
Yeah, you're just focused on your lines. I mean, at this point, I've spoken to some drivers about it, where some are fine with leaving up all the data and seeing what happened, and just having the, like, for example, the delta time, which can be useful, especially in practice, understanding where your car's going faster, slower, etc., etc. Whereas I'm one of these people that when it gets into the qualifying, when we're in the meat of a session, turn all of that off. As much data, any data that you would have. Even relative, even anything, just turn it off. Look at that time from Cooper Webster. We were talking of Logitech G Alta Z Sports. We were talking of times getting a little bit faster, more so towards the 26.7. Well, 26.879, a tenth and a half clear of Apex at the top. And I will just remind you of one thing in this championship thus far. It is a 100% rate for VRS Coanda SimSport to take a pole position. So for them, depending on which car it is, the Porsches, it was a 91, 93 and 92. I think we'll all have one. I'm not sure which one it'll be, but their record's pretty good.
It is indeed. Here, though, is that car that just got displaced from the top of the qualifying standings. Kevin Ellis Jr. back out onto track with some fresh rubber underneath him. 26 seconds as he rounds turn 4. We're not going to try and attempt, I think, some of these corner names because we're going to butcher them with our...
We'll give it a go later.
Maybe. We'll I guess one thing is you see that Lamborghini getting some airtime there. The one thing that you and I had kind of joked about as well, I had made a comment about turn 6 at Hockenheim maybe being kind of like turn 2 at Road America. A completely different spectrum here as we ride through turn 7. We've ridden through turn 7. We're still riding through turn 7 despite the fact that it's about 4 distinct corners. We're finally out of the turn 7 complex. Kevin Ellis Jr. works his way down into the heavy braking zone at turn 8. It's not a full hairpin, but it's kind of a... what would you call this? 160-degree kind of corner, using all the curves as well. And this is such a fun final chicane. There's 2 alternate lines that you can take. I've seen some rather interesting races on the iRacing service where you go left right there. Ellis Jr., I think, abandons the qualifying lap with 8 minutes still to go. That's the tricky pit entry. You've actually got 2 braking zones before you get to those yellow cones. Then you've got to slink your way in through the barriers. To the right-hand side, you'll see the fuel pumps where drivers in certain series actually go to fill their cars up. Always an interesting sight during a live race to see that happening. Take a look at the Audi up on the jacks. Interesting to see BMW, Lamborghini, Porsche, Ferrari. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the qualifying order right now. Then you've got another Ferrari, and then you've got another Audi. It's great to see the mix of cars back up at the front of the field. And of course, this new wave of GT3 machinery coming to the iRacing service, Lewis.
Yeah, it is really, really good to see. I'm liking how open we're looking right now. It's in a sense, it's more of a driver's track. Because of course we're speaking more of the curbing and stuff, where you could take to them, and some cars will perform better a little bit over the curbing. As Arnage moved up to 15, it's going to be a bit of a disappointing qualifying from them after they did so well back at Hockenheim. Struggled at Barcelona, but it's one of these tracks where your bravery, your commitment over the curves, particularly at the climb chicane, so turn 5, before we rise up the hill. Your commitment through that, your bravery of how close can you get to the track limits before either the curbs spit you off or before the in-sim track excursion gets involved and you get a slowdown penalty or even just a lap invalidated. Those are the measures that will separate drivers and stuff at the scenario. It's a very, very interesting one. Like I say, it's an oddity on the calendar. It's a very different circuit to what we're normally racing.
Take a look at Energy Simsport, who had a pretty good run last time around at Barcelona. One of the Coanda Porsches pulls to the side to let Vieira into the final sector. Let's see what the lap time's going to be. Down in 24th position. His teammate is up in 16th, 4/10 off the pace. There really is not much separating these cars. If I'm being totally honest, it's 3/10 back to 7th, and then another 3/10 back to 24th position. So Vieira all the way to the wall, and I think maybe this is actually starting his flying lap, but slightly wide through turn 1. Not ideal. Slightly missing the apex there. 6 minutes left to go. Pure Sims in the 16 car up into 16th. Always nice to have some symmetry there. It is a short lap, and like you said, Lewis, it does mean that potentially you'll see some drivers able to go out for the final runs. We've seen on the last couple of race weekends, drivers haven't necessarily been able to time that final run perfectly. It might be a little bit easier here today.
Well, you're saying of how close it is, and we were looking at Energy Simsport there. Focus on the other car, the Energy Simsport 1 car that is currently qualified in 17th position. They're about to start another lap. That's fair enough. They had, like you said, a really good run last time out. Ended up 7th in the second race at Barcelona. If they improve 1/10, they will move up 10 positions. So you'd be pretty annoyed by that, because 1/10, what is that around here? It's taking a little bit more curb here. It's getting on the power a little bit more earlier through turn 4. It's taking a bit more commitment into turn 1. It's a small margin at the moment, though. On their return, Logitech Altus Esports looking very, very good right now.
They're the only car that is a full tenth quicker than the car behind them. Right. Everyone else is separated by hundreds, if not thousands of a second. Take a look at your Porsche Tagore Esports Super Cup World Champion, 2-time champion now here in 2021. Across the line, he improves, but it is not going to be fast enough to beat the Altus team. He is only quick enough for second. The BMW of the Australian outfit really has something under their belts, I would think. What a shame that they missed out last time around, Lewis, because really in a championship as short as this, missing one race weekend can be the difference between fighting for a title versus fighting for 5th position.
And also, don't forget, I'm pretty sure they were met with was it a double disqualification, or was it just the second race back at Hockenheim? They faced issues, it was in both races, where they escaped from qualifying. They returned to pit lane during the qualifying session, which then netted them disqualifications in both races. They did it twice. Then they weren't here last time, so they have absolutely no points on the board. And it's not as if it, like a touring car category where you're going to get success ballast or whatever, and so actually coming in a little bit later or something might actually you might be able to work your way into a decent position. They are in a bad spot right now, but with this kind of pace, it's just going to try and put on a show. Seeming pretty happy and also improving. Now getting a little bit closer to a 29.7, 26.812. Very, very close to a 7.
Is that a smile on his face? You could see
look like it.
I think we also saw maybe what he was doing to help him slipstream a little bit further. You saw him squatting down just as we cut to him in the car. He will have an opportunity to get down onto pit lane, get some fresh tires and a little bit more fuel to roll himself out for the final 3 minutes in the qualifying. The 91, the 98, and the 57. So Coanda, Apex, and Inex, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. They're all down on pit lane to get their own set of tires fitted to the car. There's that braking zone, and the difference you could see. There was a car coming around to continue a qualifying lap versus the BMW making its way down onto pit road. There's some damage on the front of the Maniti Mercedes. I just wonder if that's from taking that curb at turn number 5 very, very aggressively. We've seen the Mercedes kind of strong last time around, and of course a bit of chaos. We should mention it at this point in time because of some of the chaos we've seen in the first couple of rounds. A new starting rule in effect for this race, Lewis.
Yeah, just trying to control things from the issues that we had. I mean, in the sprint challenge, Back at Barcelona, we had issues in the Sprint Masters course. We had some issues on the race starts, and also trying to nip in the bud what we saw last time out a little bit with communicating and race starts in the middle of the pack, and carnage down into turn one, just trying to get involved in that. And I quite like that, taking the initiative from Racing Control just to step things up and get involved.
I'm going to give you a bit of a counter argument here. Don't necessarily think Coanda were doing anything wrong. I mean, you have so many strong cars in the field, you lock out the front row. There was nothing stating against them doing what they did, communicating with one another on the start to be able to jump up. What was it, 10 positions at Barcelona? Not once, but twice. This time around, that won't be possible. Let's see how they go. As Bieler Racing Team has to force the Urano Audi to kind of take avoiding action. The BS Competition Zebras are right behind, ready to go for a fast lap time, as is Coanda into 8th. Still a lot of time to go. The big gap out front. Let's see if anyone can challenge the Australians on board with Core in their Ferrari as they come in through the final corner. This is a bit too close if they want any draft, I would say. But Corentin Gunes, let's see what the newcomer to the Core Sim Racing outfit can do here.
Yeah, he's in 21st position, one position back on, well, race winner this season, Kova. Tattler doing the qualifying this time. Obviously, Pekka Toivonen, we were speaking of this before, has done the first couple of rounds, but is not the primary driver in that. That is Antti Ahola, and so there's been a bit of a switch up because your second driver, whatever, can only do 2 races and whatnot. So Antti Ahola is now back behind the wheel of the car, and we'll see how they get along. Urano Esports HP up to 5th.
Here we go then. This is the business end. This is when qualifying times will come in. I must say, Corentin Gunes is doing a good job of showing off that Lego Technic 911 RSR that you can win. Remember, giveaway.sportscar open to learn more. Look at him clatter the curbs, both on the inside and then on the exit of the corner. Let's see what it's going to be. If anything, the Audi in front of him is just slightly pulled away, if you ask me right now, in through turn 7. Lots of steering lock being used. Don't necessarily know if this is going to be the lap time that Gunes wanted.
That's Dylan Scrivens as well ahead. So one Urano Esports car going fast, and the other one also going pretty fast. Of course, we've got a couple of Audis and a Lamborghini as well. Was the VRS Coanda Simsport. Well, never mind that from Scrivens, out of the way he goes. VRS Coanda Simsport in that 8, and that one being the Mercedes moving up another position, now into 8th. They'll have enough time to start another lap, 10 seconds roughly, give or take, left on the board. So they are starting their final laps now. They can complete this one. Wow, we are into the very important spot. And look at that for VRS Coanda Simsport, the number 93, 6th, and in the pit lane. That's all they will get.
Well, it does look like we may not have a Coanda on pole position this time around. Josh Rogers might have something to say about that. 1 corner left to go for the 91 car. Of course, checkered flag has flown, but in open qualifying, you can complete your lap. He is down onto pit road. It is day done then for him. Inex racing up into 3rd. The Ferrari looking very strong. Do we have a response from anyone else? Kevin Ellis Jr., I would think, by the 45 seconds indicated there. I don't necessarily think he's on a fast lap time, and we'll have to wait and see if anyone can go faster. But right now, shout out to Cooper Webster, back in the car in the sim world and doing a very strong job.
I'm genuinely very, very impressed. They're not showing any rust or anything. They're going out there, and it does seem, at least for now, that they will be the first team to dethrone VRS Coanda Simsport. Whether they can do it in the race is a very different question. We'll see if Cooper Webster will improve on this. I'm not 100% convinced. A bit of damage on the front end of that car as well, which is actually a point in this qualifying session, as Kova improved now up into 13th position.
He improves!
And it is into the 7s, was it?
798. It hasn't updated on the timing screen, so I wonder if there was an off track at some point in that lap, but just an ominous sign for the rest of the field that Altus have something under their sleeves. Almost 2 tenths between them and someone as quick in qualifying as Joshua Rogers. This is going to be fun. This is going to be intense.
Now, at this point, when you're in this in the battle pack, you've got to know that Zolder is a hard track to overtake out, but it's a momentum-based circuit. You're under pressure going into this chicane. You're lulled into the pushing it a little bit too far over the curbs, and that is why we saw 3 wide twice yesterday on that run down the hill. It is tight stuff, and it's all because of momentum.
I tell you what, let's turn up the most famous song in all of esports. Let's go trackside here in Belgium to take a look at our starting grid for race number 5, the first race in the beating number 3. A triple header to start things off. It is not going to be a VRS Coanda car on pole position. Instead, it's the Australian Cooper Webster, a 1:26.812. It's almost 2/10 between him and fellow Australian Joshua Rogers on the front row, but you'll see the rest of the margins. It is so close throughout the rest of the field. Inex Racing and the Apex Racing team, they'll line up on row number 2. Great to see the Ferrari really strong here from Zolder. Urano Esports and the championship leading VRS Coanda car, they're 5th and 6th respectively. Before 7th position, it's the R8G Junior car, Julian Sonnen. We saw the onboard there. He'll switch it on over to his teammate Quintin Violate to take the race start. Pash Gerges in the number 18 qualifies in 8th position. He'll of course change over to David Williams come the green flag, with Dakota Fripp and Lewis Nasher, Vendaval and Urano on the edge of the top 10. Martin Kroenke, great to see him really back in action in a big way in the GT3 car last time around. He'll start in 11th alongside Ruben Bonga for Maniti Racing, bongoing those drums. Kova have been so strong this season. Antiohola makes his first start. He'll line up in 13th alongside the Apex Racing team and Jamie Fluke in the 99. Urano Esports and Arnage, they share row number 8 with Pure Sims and Energy Simsport, 17th and 18th positions. 19th position, it goes to the other R8G car. Alexander Walters lines up in 19th alongside Inertia Euro RC in their Mercedes. Mac Backham for the Lego Technic Esports. They're on the edge of the top 20 with Core Sim Racing next to them. Luca Kita and the Bila Racing Euronics number 45, 23rd. Phil Denez for the BS Plus competition car. Lots of work for them to do. They want to try and continue their podium run. Core Sim Racing, Energy Simsport 25th and 26th with Valkyrie Williams Bila Racing team rounding out the tail end of the grid. I don't know if we're going to see Bila Racing team in action here today. I didn't see the number 11 car in action at all. The pace car pulls away. We've got a full lap here before we get underway. It's time for some predictions, Lewis. And before we get there, though, let's touch on that damage that we saw during qualifying. You can take damage during qualifying, come down onto pit lane and get it repaired. Not going to be the case here today. Damage may be the difference between a car coming out on top versus sliding down the field.
Yeah, I mean, these cars, I'm not going to say they can take a battering, but they can take a little bit of damage. But the more you push it, the slower it gets. I mean, we saw this, the curbing and stuff being issues at Barcelona with particularly the Mercedes, more so than others, seeming very fragile on some of that curbing. And here, it's more aggressive than even there. And through the high-speed chicanes, you're going to see quite a few bent up front ends. I have no doubt of that. It's just about minimizing that. It's about driving within yourself, within the car, and within the track itself.
So let's get that prediction then from you, Lewis. I tell you what, I'll go first and I'll make it easy for you. I'm gonna go slightly counter. I'm gonna continue the streak that we've kind of had as second place, taking to the checkered flag. I think the Coanda team, they start on the inside heading into turn number 1. The pole position is almost at a disadvantage. I'm going for that Porsche to take the victory.
Are you now? So I am going to go same side of the grid, because we were speaking about this yesterday. Is that, like you say, pole position there? It is almost a negative thing. You kind of want to start 2nd, 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th. You want to start on the inside on that run to turn 1. We saw 4 wide yesterday on that run through the first corner. It's such a crucial part of the track. I'm going a few positions back. I'm going for the number 93. I know, cliche, championship leader, don't care. I have the belief that that car is going to come forward. Yesterday, race number 1, victory came from 6th place. I like my trends, that's where I'm going.
You've gone straight to the form book. I tell you what, if the 93 can win here today in either of the races and really accumulate some solid championship points, it's already a full race victory between them and the tie for 2nd position. So they're looking very strong. I will ask you here, with the pit window, of course, being 10 minutes, I think at a track as congested as this, Lewis, there is going to be some strategy about when you pull yourself down onto pit road.
Yeah, 100% more so than the circuits that we've seen before. You've got to time your running. You want to come into pit lane, though, when you've actually, weirdly enough, when you've got a bit of clean air ahead of you, because you want to be able to commit to pit road at the proper speed, at racing speed, and not slow down. It's a huge advantage if you can do so. We saw that come into effect yesterday. We will definitely see that come into effect now. It is a high-pressure cooker around Zolder here, and I get the feeling the next hour is going to be extremely intense.
The pace car is off down onto pit road. Weak pace at 60 kilometers an hour, waiting from the signal from race control to get underway for round 5 in this VRS SCO Sprint Masters Championship. in towards the starting zone. Drivers are ready to go, trying to line themselves up for a good launch. Green flag waves, and there's a bit of a stack up. The 4-wide action has happened, but really it's because I think some cars really did not get the memo that race control had said, let's go racing in towards turn number 1. It is already that Altus BMW that pulls away into the racing lead. It's single file from the top 4, but side by side, the Mercedes for Coanda is getting squeezed out. Now fighting side by side with the Audi for RHG Junior. Interesting start there, Lewis. Pretty clean though, all things considered.
It was clean in about the messiest way you could see. They weren't like side by side to turn 1. It almost felt as if the Logitech G Esports car had a jump start. Alas, that was not the case. They went on when race control had said, and yeah, that was very, very tight. We're seeing some side by side. Pretty sure it was Vendaval there going touch and go going into the chicane. But either way, clean start up front, and Logitech G Esports have it.
Keyword there being up front, because there was some carnage at the back coming into turn number 2. Valkyrie involved with the Bila racing car of Luca Kita. So we do have some retirements, almost 3 wide exiting turn 7.
No.
And that's the RHG Porsche around in through that turn 7 complex, lining up the rears to get around. Still more side by side. That's Arnage in the pink BMW with Uran. Oh, there's a huge crash in the background. That was BS Competition getting involved. Phil Denez has lost the front clip on his M4 and now blocking the track. That Porsche nowhere to go. Oh, wonderful car control to slow down. There goes Luca Kita slinging it through the carnage in front of him. So much chaos at the front though across the start finish line. It is the Altus team that leads us through lap number 1, but look at who's putting the pressure behind them here.
Yeah, it's tight. You've got Maxime Brient as well. And don't rule out Yarltine as well, who's just basically sat there. He's got Charlie Collins directly behind Arturo Melga as well. It's going to be tight. They're going to come back together again because it's such a hard circuit to pass at. You basically got to get the other driver into a mistake, and getting a mistake out of Gordon Caruso, I don't think it's going to be the easiest measure here. And for Mitchell de Jong, I wonder if there's going to be any of the concern from Barcelona. Speaking of mistakes, remember that run into turn 1, the spin there. Yarltine, by the way, losing a position now. Speaking of mistakes, has gone a little bit too fast into turn 5, and Charlie Collins did not need another invitation to that. Up to 5th. 4th.
Oh, look at RHG slinging it down the inside. Does that open the door to Vendaval behind? Not yet, but that was a pretty interesting place to try and make the pass happen, at least this early on in the action. A number of cars have had to come down onto pit road. We are down to, I believe, just 25 cars out there and circulating, at least for the time being. We'll see if BS Competition, Energy Simsport, and Valkyrie are able to roll themselves back out onto track. Oh, there's the replay. For a moment, I thought we were watching live coverage. Around goes the BMW and Inertia in their Mercedes. We'll have to see if we can take another look at that, because I'm not exactly sure, Lewis, who really was the main culprit there.
I'd want to see it on board with the Energy Sim Sports Ferrari as they were coming out of turn 7. It was very, very tight, and I almost get the vibe going for a gap that really wasn't there, but then maybe you could argue that the BS Competition needed to give a bit more room. Energy Sim Sports shouldn't have been going for it there, and either way, coming through it, Inertia, Core, etc., the Williams Esports Razor car, and all that, even the RHG coming through at the last moment, and even Bila, who had to lift out there a little bit. Let's take a look. So very, very slow. There's a slowdown penalty. Oh, okay, so that's a bit messy. That is a bit messy. If you're going to go and serve a slowdown penalty, which would have been picked up through the turn 7 chicane, you've got to potentially, you've got to make it a bit more obvious what you're doing.
Oh, 3 wide. You said we might have this down in through turn 6 for a moment. They look to try and do that. The Mercedes are going to get mobbed by that Lamborghini. Only gets 1 position at least for now. And the other thing to note just on that incident is a slowdown penalty is always a bit more severe on lap number 1. Yeah. So I think for Phil Denez, it would have been a pretty lengthy hold. Maybe 3 seconds he would have had to give up on the track. Look at this, though. That Urano Lamborghini really looking strong. It's Daniel Pastor behind the wheel in the Coanda Sandwich. I guess not the Coanda Sandwich. I know you are a bit pedantic when it comes to this one. Well, we'll just move on straight to the next point of action. I'm not sure if you've seen the gap out front, Lewis. It's 0.6 of a second. That Altus car is trying to run away.
That's why I like Sommel. He knows it. He'll say it bang on exactly what it is. Urano sandwich, but you know, it's fine. We'll gloss over it. Either way at the front, and Charlie Collins is trying to close back up. It was the fastest lap of the race going the way of the Lego car. A bit further back from that, obviously, teammates to the VRS Commander 91 and 93 that are running a bit further up the grid, on board with Arturo Melga, trying to get by the R8G Junior car and trying to pick a way through. Violette behind the wheel of that one at present and running through turn 4. Look at that gravel trap. Many cars will be in there today.
It is so inviting, and you can see the dust that it's kicked up there. But Williams Esports Rays are kicking up a bit more of that. It was a full send from Violette down in towards turn number 2, and I think at least for the time being, Arturo Melgar just deciding not worth the fight, because of course the gap is starting to open up between them and the cars in front. So BMW leads from Porsche, Lamborghini, Porsche, Ferrari, Audi, Audi, Audi. Great to see this mix of cars. For so long, special events in the iRacing world have been a single make category, as Maniti Racing are defending from the second of the Apex Racing cars. Long way around for Jamie Fluke. Nothing doing there, I must say, for Fluke. He's trying and replicate the form book that we had last time around. The Apex Racing team really had a strong run around the circuit to Barcelona in those Lamborghinis. Let's see how it suits them here, because of course we've talked about slow corners being maybe the Achilles heel of the Lamborghini with the BOP that we've had, Lewis, but this time around, at least their teammates showing that they can run up near the front.
Yeah, we'll say, by the way, no huge gains on that start, which kind of you'd expect with how they did start. It was a bit not even frantic. I don't know what really to describe it as. The largest gainer, I do believe, is actually the Williams Esports Razor car that's gone up from 28th to 21st, so they're making some decent progress. Everyone that started inside the top 10 is still inside the top 10, just in a very slightly different order, and just behind that it's all kind of status quo. So counter to how we've seen starts for the previous 4 races, everything a bit more managed here.
Move outside of the points as Energy Simsport getting on past Core Sim Racing. That was, I think, for, well, what was it, 18th position or so. Down into this heavy braking zone they will go. And this is where, of course, that slowdown penalty was incurred from Phil Denez on lap number 1. I do see BS Competition still stationary on pit lane. Almost 5 minutes in the box and counting. The Lamborghini of Fluke slightly wide. On the right side of the screen, you can see the extent of the damage to the Zebra machine. That's going to be a lengthy repair. I don't think we see BS Competition in action here in race number 1 for much longer here.
Yeah, I think they're done. Of course, other casualties, Valkyrie Esports as well have had an issue as they're in pit lane and down the order. The 2 Beeler cars not at the start, and so there's already been drama. We've not even properly started, probably got into the meat of this race, and already quite a lot has happened despite the lack of movement, which is interesting in itself. One thing that is very interesting at the moment, and I wonder if this might be burning out tyres, whatever, because you don't really pull away from VRS Commander Simsport unless you're on top form, but clearly Caruso very much is, because out to 1.4 seconds over Mitchell de Jong.
And trying to extend it. I mean, de Jong has not necessarily been the most comfortable, I would say, in this series so far. I mean, last time he did look pretty rapid, but has not necessarily shown the form that I would have expected from a driver of his caliber, as we watch Urano sideways over the curb at turn number 5, and Vendaval is going to try and send it now as we come through turn 6. The braking zone of turn 7 is so inviting to make a mistake, but nothing doing there. Is the Lamborghini trying to go around the outside. All sorts of action, but it's all from 7th on back, and these guys have to be careful, Lewis, because it's points-paying positions on the line. If there's any sort of carnage here, there are a number of cars ready to pounce.
Yeah, certainly are. I mean, that was a pretty tight affair. Again, that was just the classic overdoing turn 5, opens a door down the hill and through turn 6, and Arturo Melga just overdid it a little bit, and like you say, just coming through there, Fripp and moving up the order. We're going to see that a lot today. Not quite sure how Daniel Pazder got side by side with David Williams, but maybe something in the same sort of vein, but wasn't able to complete the move, because going around the outside of turn 7, saw it a couple of times at the start of race 1 yesterday, where they would give it a go and it just wouldn't work.
Been some more contact that I've seen between Pure Sims, who are down the order. I wonder exactly what happened there, but we're watching still these battles. Really, it is so close, and you could really put any one of these cars up front. A slight mistake, like we saw from Urano, could open the door for not one, but maybe even more, a couple more to come on past. Still a long way to go in this race. Take a look at the side-by-side. It's Jamie Fluke on the right. I'm not exactly sure who that is on the left. I would have to assume that is Ruben Bonga in the Maniti Mercedes. Look at how calm he is, despite the fact that Fluke is applying some sort of pressure to the rear end.
That's it. You've got to remain calm, though. You've got to remain in control. The calmer you are, the more comfortable you are in the car. I mean, I've said this is a typical thing of not just racing, but of any. This applies to life in general. But when you're under pressure, when you're like that, don't get flustered. Index drop down a position, by the way, as R8G Junior do move up one. Just a bit further up. There it is. I'm assuming that would have been a bit of a send down the inside from Quentin Violette. So getting down the inside of Yoltine, that's that. I mean, good move if you're going to do that. He's a well-experienced racer. But yeah, you've got to remain calm. You've got to breathe. Focus on your breathing. Focus on what you're doing. You can only do the lap times that you can do. There's no point in thinking, oh, but everyone else is doing a 28.4, so I now have to do 28.4s, but I've only ever been able to do a 28.6. If you can only do 28.6s, do 28.6s. Just do that. Just keep doing what you're doing, but drive within yourself. Just going to say one thing about driving within yourself, and I know I've brought it up a few times, but it's now at 2.8 seconds. I was about to see Sports lead. I'm assuming there's been a mistake from Dion.
Well, I was about to say that we're going to see a bit of a send potentially from Kevin Ellis Jr. because you can see the gap just continues to extend for the race lead. It's a three-way fight for second. At this point in time, Charlie Collins, your championship leader, is putting a lot of pressure onto the rear end, and he might be looking at trying to get up into that second spot sooner rather than later. Only about 10 minutes away from the pit window. We'll see if potentially drivers try and undercut in effect by coming in, getting their new driver in, getting some fresh rubber. Here's that replay. It's the second of the Energy Sim Sport cars that's involved. Last time around, it was Pure Sims missing their braking zone at Barcelona. This time around, just the slightest of contacts heading into turn 5, and, well, their nose straight into the tire wall. But back to the live coverage, I do wonder how patient Kevin Ellis Jr. and Charlie Collins are going to be here. Gap now almost 3 seconds to your race leader.
That's the problem, is that if this was all one big train, it's fine. You'd not need to rush through it. If we were all in good, even if you're 6th, 7th, 8th, you're not going to rush it because you can see the leader. What they can see from the leader, though, is that he's getting away. And so they'll be feeling it. And, oh, look at that dive from Charlie Collins into turn 1, making that one stick. So we're going to see 2 VRS commanders on the podium. And that is what's going to happen. It's Maxime Brient behind the wheel of the Apex Racing team car right now in that Apex. And, yeah, just door open, don't need an invitation. Charlie Collins straight through, now gets to battle it out. I have noticed that. Does that mean that they're doing, yeah, the 93 is doing it the other way round? So, because obviously Charlie Collins had raced a couple of times with Josh Rogers because they were always doing the same point in the race, but they've switched round, unless I'm mistaken, and doing it a different way.
I think the difference is that Josh Rogers may have qualified then. And yes, indeed. Usually we see Rogers qualifying in race number 2 and therefore finishing race 2 as, oh, look at that. The Mercedes have been swarmed by Urano. And now one more move down the inside, not able to get it done. But I tell you what, Daniel Pastor is trying everything, throwing the kitchen sink at David Williams in front of him, and Arturo Melgar trying to play his part. This is the battle for 9th on back, as side by side it is Apex Racing Team and Maniti once more. I wonder, did Urano just get past Kova there? So, well, second place in the championship. They only have 1 point provisionally as a send from Arnage competition. It's going to be 0 unless they can fight this one back.
Yeah, this is the thing, is when you're in a train like this is where it's intense, because you know that if you're backing out of it for the car ahead of you, you're going to get sent, and that's exactly what's happened here. Arnage as well now covering over. Energy Sim Sports coming through down the inside, no way to pass, and Arnage are going to go wide at turn 1 here as they were trying to open the door to get to the inside at turn 2. Energy Sim Sports are going to come through and up into 16th spot. This is outside of the points, and this will be brilliant for Kova, because the harder they fight, again, I said it time and time again, the more they are dropped off the back of this train. It looks like Arnage, with their current line and their drive off of turn 4, might hold it, but they're still side by side.
Thing out of turn 5, the car on the the car on the inside always has the preferred line, and indeed the Ferrari will slip on past, but incredible stuff. And really the story here is Kova, second in the championship, tied on points with the 91 car. After that speeding penalty last time around, Lewis, the momentum has really fallen away from the BMW. The number 7 car looking to be in a bit of trouble here.
Yeah, got to say, Antti Ahola, who's behind the wheel of that one, obviously first time racing this season. Pekka Toimonen's behind the wheel of that car for the first 4 races of the championship, and so Antti Ahola's had to be really thrown into the deep end. Of course, you know, well versed with battling in the deep end, but still, this is certainly not what they would have wanted. And unlike, it would be so easy for them to be like, oh, well, maybe the BMW doesn't match well to here, and maybe this, that, and the other. Clearly that's not the case, because Altus have figured it out, and they've got the BMW to work very, very nicely around here as they continue to pull out yet another second on Mitchell de Jong.
Maybe we need success ballast in this championship. Just put all the weight on Altus and see what we can do. The team have done a really nice job balancing these cars out. I mean, the Ferrari hasn't necessarily been the strongest in the first couple of rounds, but we did see Energy, for example, very strong at Barcelona. Great to see Inex Racing up there in the top 6, at least for now, but they are falling off the back of the top 5 cars and into the clutches of the Vendaval number 9 that sits in 7th position. Dakota Fripp behind the wheel as into turn 5. This train of cars for 8th position on back continues to fight, and I tell you what, Daniel Pastor is still eyeing up David Williams into the braking zone. Oh no! Energy Simsport stricken in the middle of the track, and I saw a couple of cars taking to the grass to get around.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was self-inflicted. It's actually very easy to do that yourself by taking too much of the second curb, and it just, if you launch it wrong, I mean, Sommer was saying, oh no, it's just on the grass. It was just on the grass on turn-in, and there was a little bit of assistance from the Arnage car, which might have a bit of damage on the front end. Sommer was saying that that's the latest international airport here in Belgium, and you're seeing why, because if you take those curbs a little bit too hard, you do go up into the air in a very, very big way, and they're just more so on the turn-in, where you go as far over to the right-hand side of the racetrack to open up the corner as best you can so you can carry all the speed through. Opened it up a little bit too far, got onto the grass turn-in, rear end said no thank you.
There was also a second incident that happened at the same time. It was, I believe, Yannick Kiro and Mac Backham going side by side in the core Ferrari and the Lego Technic Porsche in towards turn 5. Just a little bit of contact before they even got to the stricken Brazilian Ferrari, and back him around and into the grass. Here's a look at that replay, and you can see Williams getting involved as well, and it's over the inside curb. I don't even know if there was much contact there, and it sends the 92 around.
Yeah, see, I get that, back very, very fast. That was side by side to that chicane, never really ideal, and that's exactly what we saw there. Let's see what happens with the Urano Esports Lamborghini as Daniel Pastor's going on the attack, has still got the bread of the VRS Commander Mercedes either side of him, and the sandwich looks pretty meaty right now, looks pretty feisty right now, looks pretty tasty.
You're never going to let me forget these ones,
Nope.
are you? Oh, Kroenke a little bit sideways. That's going to open the door, I think, potentially to Ruben Bonga behind. The Mercedes are struggling a bit more here than I would have expected, as now you can see into the final chicane. It's going to be over the inside curb and really just using the weight and the grunt of the engine up front to pull them down this main straightaway. The gap has opened up to Melgar in front of them. All that battling for 9th and 10th positions. I know that Daniel Pastor wants to get past, but to some extent right now it doesn't look like it's happening. We may see the undercut being the preferred strategy here, as around the outside Jamie Fluke just takes a look.
Yeah, you've got to, I mean, battling around here more so than any other circuit we've actually been to does cost you an awful lot of time. You see it at Barcelona, where when you pass or get past or whatever, you can just get into the slipstream and pull your way back up to the battle, so you really don't lose that much time. And so an undercut there is actually, you more want to be in the pack. You want to be around other drivers because it just pulls you along. Whereas right here, you lose so much time in the battle pack that, yeah, we're going to see a lot of drivers at least attempt an undercut. Whether it'll be to good effect or not, we'll have to wait and see. Because, as I've said before, say for example you're Jamie Fluke right now, you're in the battle pack, you think, I could probably jump these if I had some clean air. That's all well and good. Coming into pit lane though, you're all at the same, the braking zone's on the racing line, of course, and your braking line into pit lane is much, much later. And so if Fluke was to enter pit lane in 6 minutes time, so not right now, he's got a car directly ahead of him. He has to brake early, then accelerate, and then brake again to get into pit lane. And it's not, you want to do it in clean air.
It's a very good point. We'll see how things play out, because like you said, under 6 minutes to go until we enter the pit stop window and that cycle that we will likely see. Trying to take a look at my timing screen. 4 seconds is the gap between Caruso and de Jong, so hasn't necessarily opened up too much in the later portions of this race, this stint, I should say, especially when you think about the fact that most of these drivers will take fresh tires in the pit stop, Lewis. It does mean you can be a bit more aggressive on your tire settings and how much you want to use and abuse them in just 30 minutes of action.
It's about timing, isn't it? You know, you roll around for 10 minutes, let them get into their own little window, and then, you know, 5 minutes to go in your stint, you destroy them. You absolutely destroy them. You know, you're wrestling around because you know they're going straight back into the virtual garage, and you'll never see them again. So you might as well use and abuse them. We've seen some tyre strategy work before. You know, only taking 2 tyres, taking no tyres. I actually wonder if we're going to see some of that around here. It's one of the hardest tracks to overtake out on the calendar, just to try and get themselves into a different position, a little bit of track position here and there. I wonder if we're going to see any of that today.
You can see as well the Apex racing car, Maxime Briant, behind the wheel. Excuse me if I said Kevin Ellis Jr. at some point in this race. Of course, Kevin Ellis did the qualifying duties, sharing it with the very rapid Maxime Briant, now being harassed and harangued by Quentin Violate, such a promising young Frenchman, part of the R8G squad. And not for the first time, we're seeing the R8G junior car doing better than their slightly older counterparts. I do wonder, though, we saw the send from Charlie Collins down the inside of Briant through turn 1. Would not be surprised if we see something similar from Collins to get on past de Jong. And we have seen on a number of occasions here, Lewis, over the course of the first 4 hours of competition, Coanda teammates coming together with one another.
Well, I mean, I can't remember what the stat was that you came out with last round, where we'd seen at that point 7 races, and this is in the first race. We'd seen 7 races. Now we're on our 9th race, if you include, of course, the 11th race, or whatever it is. If you include the challenge series as well. How many times we'd seen teammates come together? And it's not once, it's something like 5, 6, 7 times already across the series. Different teammates from different teams coming together. And Coanda are one of them. They nearly made it one extra one when there was a bit of a move from de Jong on Dane Warren and a bit of a slide round. It might have actually been the Lego car. But they went for a slide. They went for a spin, did Mitch de Jong. There was nearly another bit of contact. So they aren't afraid to race each other. And remember back, of course, to that intense battle between Charlie Collins and Josh Rogers.
Gap now 4.5 seconds. It might as well be a nice Sunday drive for the Altus Esports team in front. Of course, I don't think it's actually Sunday for them, but it's probably touching the early hours of Sunday morning. We've been talking to Dane Warren in our post-race interviews at about I think 3 a.m. for him come the conclusion of the 2 hours of racing. So it's sometimes tough to be racing in that time zone. Of course, Joshua Rogers, potentially the most famous Australian sim racer, has now made his way over to Pastures New, part of the Coanda team house in Germany, and, well, doesn't have to compete on such an odd sleep schedule, I would have to think. And, well, if anything, I said the move from Collins may be forthcoming. I might actually say that Violate wants to rob Maxime Briant of that 4th position at this point.
Yeah, we'll have to see what will happen, because that R8G Junior car is looking pretty tasty right now when it comes to this battle, and potentially looking to move up another couple of spots. It's definitely on the cards as VRS Coanda since what's finally, they're still battling out, never mind. I was going to say they're finally past the Urano Esports HK and Lamborghini. They are in fact through, so both of those VRS Coandas have passed, and now it's the Maniti Racing attempt. The bonga drums are banging away, and the door could be open for a pass on the Lamborghini. You've also got the Apex Racing team Lamborghini behind that, as there's a bit of a send there. I think they're all going to come out in the same positions they entered.
It's a difficult place to try and take advantage like Jamie Fluke was going to do. In fact, now has to defend from the second Urano Audi. Nicholas Laubisch behind the wheel of that side-by-side. Laubisch sends it under the braking zone, has a nose in front, so we'll have the inside line for the second part of the chicane. But drive on the side of Jamie Fluke, and he'll hold the inside for turn number 1. Opens the door for Antiohola in the BMW. Down into turn 1, braking at the coach signs in the right-hand side. I don't think the BMW is going to be able to do anything. Laubisch is off into the grass. Lets Fluke have the position, at least for now. Orange competition, trying to rob the solitary point that Kova have as contact, and the second place car in the championship is spun around.
Yeah, that was Ricardo Rica. That's a shame for Antiohola, who was just looking to go and get the cutback, the switchback on the Urano Esports car, and, well, there was a car already there, and they made contact departing it. Bit of a shame, but I guess that's how it goes.
Fortunately, if anything, they managed to get that car spun around in short order. There's the contact, really. I mean, Kova all the way to the outside in the curve when you don't necessarily want to be. On arch competition, just trying to squeeze them that little bit too much. Drops then Kova to 21st position. It's looking like it will be tough for them to secure championship points. And of course, the car that they're tied with, Mitchell de Jong, Joshua Rogers, sitting up there in second position, looking very good. Pit window is open. Who's going to come down
91.
This time around?
91 straight into the pit lane. That was quick. Pit window was open for 3 seconds before they made the decision to dive. Mitchell de Jong already down.
I will say it's quite funny. My timing screen lets me know when cars have crashed. Apparently entering pit road triggers that same bit of detection because I've been told that all of these cars, it's not just Mitchell de Jong, it is the Inex Racing car. I see Apex Racing, Urano all down onto pit road, taking that very first opportunity. And I do think it's a good call for the 91 here because getting Joshua Rogers looks very, very good in qualifying. He'll have some clean air. Let's see if he's able to try and hold off the challenge from their teammates, the 93.
And we also have to ask the question, because there was a bit of pace drop-off from de Jong there. Now, we know that VRS Commander have experimented with only taking 2 tyres and whatever this season, and just trying to play with it. We'll counter with that with how long their pit stop is in comparison to Logitech Gialtis Esports when they depart pit lane, whenever they come in. I mean, to be fair, at the moment they're on electric pace. But now with the 93 of Charlie Collins released, this is kind of where is Collins going to respond with some very, very good lap times. Going to try and close that gap down themselves. It's a big, big gap. By the way, 61 seconds, the total traversal time in pit lane from the number 91.
And about 30 seconds of that is just trundling down the pit road. Here is second, third, and fourth. Anyone down this time around? The 93 is interesting call from Collins. It leaves the Lamborghini and the Audi still on track to scrap things out here.
Responding maybe to teammates. I'm not sure how much they're communicating on this or whether they're just racing. I mean, I'd kind of like them just to race between themselves and not receive any instruction here unless it was getting a little bit too dicey and whatever. Battling it out for a championship. I know this car has got a 30-point lead over its teammate, but you're still fighting for the championship. We're still early days in the season. We'll pass halfway point after this evening. Only a third of the way through in at the moment. The number 93 will come to a stop. Charlie Collins will get out. Dane Warren will get in. And this is the car that started from 6th position. Now, this is where, like, on the outlap from this, anyone who's trying to battle, anyone who's trying to undercut, the most important thing for that driver fresh into the car, and we saw this happen yesterday, is do not get a slow down penalty. You don't want to slow down penalty at any point. You certainly don't want to be your first lap behind the car.
It's all about momentum, and Joshua Rogers is coming through the final corner. As you can see, still up on the jacks is the 93. They're off and rolling as Rogers rolls himself across the start-finish line. It's going to be close, but I think the 93 should have it. It's also a tricky pit exit here. You can see there are walls surrounding you, ready for you to make that mistake. It's going to be neck and neck on pit exit, and I think Rogers has done enough to get in front now.
Yeah, Rogers being able to stay ahead of the number 93 there, taking over from Mitchell de Jong. Fantastic stuff. They're pretty much in exactly the same time between them as when they came in, so no time lost, no time realistically gained. But now, you know Josh Rogers is going to be hungry. You know he's going to be firing in as good lap times. And look at that, biting Logitech Gialtis Esports into the pit lane. RHG Esports Junior take over the lead of the race. But now our race is very much on. What will the gap be?
It'll be close, I think. And not between necessarily the Altus car and the cars behind, because it is actually a Sunday drive. Simon Feigl jumping into the YouTube chat to let us know that they are well and truly racing into the early hours here on a Sunday morning. It's going to be difficult, I think, between the Coanda cars and Maxime Briette now handing over to Kevin Ellis Jr. Can Kevin get himself up to speed? And maybe has Maxime done enough to hold on and jump in front of the Coanda duo? We're waiting first for the Altus car to roll himself off. I'm not sure if they're taking tires right there. It's an awfully long stop. It is an awfully long stop. He's still going to have the race lead as Briette drops off the jacks. He's going to be behind, I would think, the Coanda duo. But the gap for the race lead might be coming down ever so slightly here.
Yeah, it was slower only by a second. It was just a little bit slower, so maybe it wasn't quite as bad as I thought. I just didn't see it. I was like, drop down, go. But then obviously they are the last car in pit lane after that pole position, so they've got, free track position and that kind of stuff when it comes to the exit of pit lane. So they were in control of that. They're in control of their own destiny, although the gap has come down. What was it? It was around about 5 seconds, wasn't it? Now 3.
Let's see if Rogers can set to work, but I do think that the number 43 car really has something under its sleeve because, well, qualifying went very well for them as your race leader comes on in. That's Violate, who will hand it on over to Julian Sonnen for the R8G Juniors, as Maniti Racing and Urano still out there on track, followed by Williams Esports Razor, who are up 25 positions, of course, midway through the pit cycle. That will obviously shake things up, but starting the last car to actually start this race, Lewis, they are having another fine charge. It's Daniel Lafuente working his way through the field.
Yeah, did really well in the earlier stages earlier on in this race, except for they were the highest climber for a while. They got from 28th up to 21st, and you know, like I say, they're running in 3rd now, which is like ha ha ha. That's quite funny in the sense of how much they've gained, but it's not quite the full picture there, as all the switching and stuff are happening with the drivers in pit lane. R8G Junior were coming up, I was almost a little bit concerned then.
Ooh,
in comparison.
Battle between Kevin Ellis and the championship leaders. I think for now, Dane Warren has managed to hold on, but R8G has jumped them both. Wonderful pit cycle. Quintin Violate putting in the quick lap times to do the overcut here. And well, the 93 car has been swarmed, has a lot of work still to do.
The 93 must have had a slowdown. The 93 must have had a slow. It did. It must have, because they were right on the back of the 91, and when that Lamborghini got involved, they'd already dropped off of the rear end of the 91, so Dane Warren must have had some sort of issue and having to return time to the track. And this is a thing that we've seen a few times where you push it a little bit too far on the track and you have to pay the price. There is a consequence to all of that, and now we're going to see a 3-way fight for what will be 3rd.
And well, I tell you what, Sonnen has to really get himself switched on and get those tires up to temperature as quickly as possible, because Kevin Ellis trying to get on past. He wants to close the gap to the car in front. Warren tags the back of Kevin Ellis. Nothing done there. They both hold position, but they've lost some time and some ground to the car in front. It was deep under the brakes from the 93 car. Great car control from Kevin Ellis Jr. to hold on there.
Yeah, I've seen that a few times. It's so easy to do. In fact, yesterday in the battle that we saw in race number 2 between Corsin Racing and SimRC, it was Oscar Mangan and Jürgen Frank battling it out in a really genuinely enthralling and fantastic battle. But it was a mistake at that point of the race from Oscar Mangan with 2 laps to go that allowed Jürgen Frank to pull away from doing pretty much just that, just overcooking the braking zone down into turn 8. Thankfully, there wasn't contact between the two, but it's so easy to do that. Well, lift-off has been achieved. VRS Commander SimSport playing a bit of Flight Simulator this evening and taking to the curbs and up in the air. That'll be where the slowdown came from and where the time was lost in the 91. A very costly mistake.
Accumulating those frequent flyer miles. These cars do the same. I must say, I don't remember the last time you've commentated on a race here at Zolder, Lewis, but the last time I commentated on a race was the 23 hours of Zolder that we did in partnership with Jimmy Broadbent. It was a charity race, and well, it was a lot of fun in some ways. Race control maybe overly inserting themselves into the mix and throwing safety cars, putting cars a lap down, giving all sorts of wacky penalties. The most wacky thing that happened, though, is I was forced to sing live on RaceSpotTV. I hope that doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah, that was it was an interesting one. Of course, you could donate to give other people penalties, force other people to sing whatnot. It was a bit of fun. I think it was £70,000 were raised that day, so good effort from everyone. I've actually never commentated a race around here, so
really,
I've raced it plenty of times, always very badly.
Well, interesting. With just a minute and a half left to go, it's only Urano and Williams still out there on track, yet to come down onto pit road as Maniti rolls himself off. It was a long run for their first driver. Tim Matska has jumped behind the big green machine and feeds himself right back into that battle. In fact, he might have leapfrogged Jeremy Bootaloop in the number 81 car. So all sorts of strategy happening here. And we say strategy, but it's not the same sort of strategy that you'll see in a endurance race. It's all about finding clean air. And well, I think Quintin Violate and his teammate Julian Sonnen really showing what can happen if you time your pit stops to perfection here.
Yeah, that's it. It's you know, less so on the do you do this, do you do that, how can you double stick, can you triples, can you do all that? No, none of that. It's just about, like you say, the timing of the pit stop. You've only got a 10-minute window to do it. It's not as if you've got the entire race open, so you've got a very specific period of the race. Luck will play its part, but you have to secure your own destiny, and at the moment, that is exactly what they've done. By the way, you know how I like talking about that gap between the what will become the race lead? It's now down to 2 seconds. Josh Roger is closing in on Peter Webster.
Oh, so maybe Rogers is having some very early form here, but you never know. It could be something in terms of the tires. He did say De Jong's timing kind of dropped off in the closing portion of the stint. Pit window is closed. The final few cars are down onto the lane. It's the Urano Audi that now rolls with Williams Esports. A full 2 seconds quicker in that pit stop window. I think the Williams Esports car should feed out maybe into 14th or so position. It will be close with the Urano car exiting pit road now, neck and neck, not with the Mercedes in front, but with their teammate behind. Oh, almost contact there with Dylan Shrivens, I think that was. But they feed themselves out very nicely back into this grouping of cars.
Yeah, it was. It's tight. The pit exit round here is pretty tight. That is the problem, and clearly some issues there. And it is how it goes. Dylan Scrivens, like you say, behind the wheel now. It was close. You run through that apex at turn 2, and where you're on such a tight entrance to it on the exit of pit lane, your front end just doesn't really grip, and you push wide, and that's where we see contact. We really got another bit of contact between teammates, so I'm sure they'll all be watching through their fingers, because it's tight. You're deep breath. I'm sure there's a bit of communication though, just to aid it, and trust me, you need it. I don't think the pit lane around here is the greatest pit lane of all time, but you know, there's worse in the world. In fact, there's worse next round when we go to the Red Bull ring.
Wait, isn't Monza next?
Monza's next. You're absolutely right. Red Bull ring's the penultimate round of the season. There we get to see that lovely pit lane.
You are getting me very, very confused for a moment. I will say it's a track that really hasn't changed since it was, you know, built back in 1963. You know, a couple of chicanes added here and there, but really retains the charm of its initial layout, and such a fast-flowing track, even though it's got those chicanes. I mean, you think of turn 7, Lewis, where we saw, of course, Phil Denez get that slowdown on lap number 1. It's about carrying your momentum, building your confidence up through the course of the race week. Of course, free practice sessions to let these drivers get out onto track and see what the lap times of their competitors are. It really is a track where confidence is king.
Yeah, you know, you need to understand. I mean, if there's one thing that you need to understand around here more so than anything else, is the width of your car. If you were to compare this to any other circuits in the world, I guarantee most of the circuits you compare this track to actually street circuits, because it's got that tight claustrophobic feel. It's got that chicane bouncing and bumping across and dodging this left, right and centre. It is a hard track, and it's very, very bumpy. You can lose grip over this end of the track. You go over the crest here into this heavy braking zone where it's quite bumpy. It's dirty on the inside. You're lulled into potentially sending one down the inside, and yeah, it does have that street circuit vibe, even though certainly not in a street circuit. Although it does have, it's quite close to a town. It does have a one of those classic, what we love in motorsport. He says sarcastically, the things from the council where it's like, oh no, you can't race between this time and this time, and it has to be below 98 decibels, and there's 2 bits on the track to record it. It's hard work. Who thought building a village next to a racetrack was a good idea?
Well, I think this is maybe slightly different, right? Because the village always was around. You think of something like Laguna Seca, where people are now building houses near the track and then complaining about the noise. A very different sort of a thing. Those noise meters, I don't even know what you call them, the recording devices. They're outside of turn 4, so right here, where the cars are powering themselves down right now, and then between turn 7 and 8, you'll see blue poles on the side of the track. But of course, during race weekends, those noise limits are removed, which is a wonderful thing. I will say, Lewis, I mean, we've seen an influx of street circuits. I say influx. Well, we've got the Long Beach track, which is finally finished after existing in point cloud format for so long here on iRacing. Also got Chicago and that exploratory layout that, of course, was done in conjunction with NASCAR. But so many classic street circuits across the globe. If you had to pick one, which one would it be? Because I can already tell you're probably not going to say the one that everyone's thinking.
Well, I mean, you've got places like Monaco, you've got places like Townsville. That's an appropriate one at the moment, isn't it? But there is one that they raced only a couple of times. And the only reason why I'm going to say this is because I've never driven it, but every time I watch the flow of it, I think, ooh, I'd love to give that a go. And that's Newcastle in Supercars, because that looks like a proper quality racetrack. And I'd fancy giving that one a go. Of course, you've got Macau and God knows what else. But yeah, I'd go with Newcastle.
I'm glad you didn't say Monaco. I mean, you mentioned Monaco, but I was hoping you wouldn't. I'm just slightly biased. I would love to have Singapore, just so that I can go and drive around the streets and recognize all the different things around the track. Might not produce the most scintillating of races, depending on what car you throw around there, but it is a very... it's always fun to be able to go to a hometown track and see what things are like. More gravel being kicked up, and you can see just how wide some of the cars are running. For the final points-paying position, by the way, it is Williams versus Core. That was just at the edge of your screen. As you can see, there's some action there. Jeremy Bouteloup looking rather calm. Matt Backham lurking in his rearview mirror this time around as Zach Campbell has to defend from Dylan Shrivens in the Audi. He's giving it a lob, as he said on social media, because he actually didn't own the track until about 7 days ago, which might actually be a more common thing that for some of these drivers than they'd rather let on, because not necessarily a track which has seen so much high-level competition here on the iRacing service.
Pretty sure this was the first track that they rated when the Formula Renault 3.5 was new to the service. I'm pretty sure this was the first track it actually raced at properly in anger in week 1 of that season. And they used the fast chicane at the final bit. They used to go left there and then right. And it was hard work. I'll go with that. It was very, very hard work. It might have been first week, second week when that was the first time that I got the track for iRacing. So, it's not one that you typically race. It's not one that comes up that often. And so it's one of those ones that's a bit of a curveball, and we like to see, we'll say for Bobo there, I probably had to lift out of it a little bit on the rear end of Bouteloup, who took off once again for Zach Campbell, rather, who took off through the chicane for Bouteloup. That front of that, I'm going to say it again, the Mercs do look a little bit fragile, because if you look closely to Bouteloup's front end, there you go, you can see it very clearly there, clear as day. Again, damage on it.
Time to break out the yellow pen tool, I would think, but you can see this is going to be a battle between Campbell and Shrivens that will rage on for 18 more minutes. In terms of your race lead, it has opened up very slightly, about 2.3 seconds at this point in time, so Webster carrying in that form from qualifying, but instead of being 1 lap pace, now it's the pace over the course of the stint. In terms of lap record, by the way, in a GT3 car set by Christopher Haase in a Audi R8 LMS, which was back in 2017, a 129.834, and of course, we are racing in some rather cool track conditions. The track temperature is still only about 28 degrees Celsius, but for a couple of seconds quicker than that, so just a slightly interesting factoid for all of you watching. Of course, this layout has been unchanged since 2002. Lap record goes to Sebastian Bourdais in a champ car when they made their one and only trip to this track. It was a 1:14.089. Mentioned the Formula 3.5. Everyone's favorite driver, Pastor Maldonado, has the lap record there, set back in 2006. That was a 1:17.781. Just interesting to see some of the lap times and how these very different cars, the GT3 cars, compare to something like a Formula Renault 3.5. I will say as well, while we're watching all of this battle going on in anger, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, Lewis, they really haven't been changing around too much, and the championship leaders, they have the fastest lap, but they're pretty content to ride around in top 5 right now.
And why wouldn't they be? Just do what you're doing. If people fall off, people fall off. If they attack, they might get caught by Sedgwick behind in the Inex car, so he's hopped in from Yalty. The Soinen as well, like I say, at the head of this, they're doing great for REG. I will say with Rogers, that gap was coming down. It's now starting to hold firm. Cooper Webster has responded and is holding out that 2-second gap. And to be fair, you want to hold Josh Rogers at arm's length. You don't want to let him get too close. By the way, of all the other things that have raced around here, there's a lot that races or has raced around here. It's got a large history in motorsport and just in the world itself. You've obviously had more recently NASCAR Whelen Euro Series, which races around here constantly, and one of their flagship tracks, along with the likes of Brands Hatch and whatnot. Around here, though, I think it was 2002, the UCI Racing Road World Championship, which is cycling, was here. Was based in Tour de France has been here as well on the cycling terms, and got to bring that up every now and then, especially with Tour de France being on at the moment.
I know you've been enjoying watching that as well. Of course, the 2021 campaign has been quite interesting in France. Shout out, I forget his name right now, so I'm going to have to go take a look. But there's a guy, I'm not sure if you have followed this part, Lewis, but there's a guy who has been doing his own Tour de France. He's calling it the Alt Tour.
Yes.
No support crew. He's carrying his camping equipment, his food, his water. He's not having any, cars to take him between various stages. He's having to do all of that extra riding around. He's been doing a wonderful job. He actually finished earlier than the rest of the field. Of course, I must say, it's all in aid of charity. You can learn more about that by going to alttour.ef.com. It was Lachlan Morton who did the wonderful job. It was 225 hours of riding across 18 days, 3,500 miles traveled with a vertical climb of 220,000 feet. I had to just make sure I was reading that correctly because my oh my, that is a feat of human just strength and perseverance.
I went out for a bike ride yesterday just before the broadcast, and I was still exhausted going through it. So, power to that. But, you've got to, this is actually an interesting point when it comes. I mean, we were more speaking about this in endurance racing, but fitness and stuff in sim racing is actually becoming a bit of a thing. Is that you want to be healthy, you want to be in position of fitness because it allows you to concentrate that bit better, mental fatigue and not being part of it. And trust me, this kind of racing, you will get mental fatigue because you could only really take this level of concentration. For the most part, I think the average is around about 5 or 10 minutes that you can deal with this amount of focus, this amount of concentration before you need to go like, I need to breathe. Whereas these drivers, obviously through practice and whatnot, through doing it again and again and again and again and again, they build themselves up so they can do it for an hour, for half an hour, for whatever it is. But this is just so intense. I know we're not seeing the side-by-side stuff. There's Course and Racing and Williams Esports Razor battle it out for the final points-paying position a bit further behind this. But it's that intensity, that the perfection required here. It's hard work.
It's not necessarily a side of sim racing that we talk about and you see too often, but it is very much the case. I think of someone like Brendan Lee, who is not necessarily such an iRacing competitor, but a lot of the Coanda guys have been squabbling in their ventures in other simulators. You get the 4-wide view there of the battle for 11th place. This is wonderful. Jeremy Bootsloop, Zach Campbell, Dylan Shrivens, and Lewis Nash. This is 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. All the while behind them, that battle for the final points-paying positions is intensifying as Karn Tenkunes applies the pressure to Ate Kopanen in the Williams Esports Razor car. Up front, for those wondering, there's not much happening. The gap is fairly steady between the 43 and the 91 car, and Kevin Ellis Jr. is being quite patient in his pursuit of Julian Sun. And like you said, not so much side by side, but it's not just about the physical and mental focus here. The one thing that I always wonder, Lewis, is how much do these guys blink when they're behind the wheel?
Yeah, you'd think that maybe not much because you're so focused. They do blink quite a lot. I mean, I've said before, like when it comes from a psychological point of view, a friend of mine, his name's David Carter. We were going into a race once, and he joined someone else's TeamSpeak channel. And this is how easy it is to distract sim racers, because he just asked before the start of the race, like, "Oh, guys, good luck. By the way, when you're racing, do you breathe through your nose or your mouth?" And then just left. And it's, trust me, that is hard to focus through as there comes a dive finally to the inside. Is it going to be a move? Is it going to be completed? The answer to that is no. But Kevin Ellis Jr. has been looking a few times to try and grab the final spot on the podium off of the R8G Junior car. And as we're approaching the final 12 minutes of the race, that timer is going to disappear very quickly. You think you've got all the time in the world, but it disappears very, very fast. He's not thinking of where he's breathing. He's not thinking of how many times he's blinking. He's thinking about, I've got to get past that Audi.
Something else that's popular, we're talking about all of these external things, or I guess internal, when you're talking about body function. The glasses, the anti-glare glasses, one more send from Ellis as he's trying to just find a way past, but having to be patient, having to just work his pressure onto the back of the R8G Junior car. And well, Julian Sutton doing a wonderful job to fend off that charge, at least for now. These cars about 5 or 6 seconds behind the VRS Coanda car in front, who is in fact chipping away at the gap now once more. It's under 2 seconds once again. Joshua Rogers trying to set the afterburners to max, but Cooper Webster is saying, I can do the same thing. And well, they are matching and trading lap times back and forth. With 11 minutes to go, I think it means we've got about 9 or 10 laps still in this race, so plenty of opportunity. And I said it slightly earlier, the hairpin that we're coming up to right now is not necessarily a full hairpin. It really does mean the car on the outside is a bit more purchase to get the power down and the run in towards that final corner.
And they also have the inside line into the final chicane as well. You've got this bit as well where it tightens up. It's a little bit awkward. Ellis Jr. has to make this stick somewhere. It's just, where's a good opportunity? In an ideal sense, he'll want to force a mistake from the car ahead going through the turn 5 chicane. That's where it happens quite a lot. A little bit wide, a bit of a mistake from himself going through the final chicane. You can see a little bit of frustration getting in there, and naturally that's how it goes around here. You're concentrating so hard on throwing it around, and that slight little bit of a mistake, that lack of purchase off of the final corner when you're just kicking it up the gravel, the grass. And any time that they fight, Dane Warren will be waiting to get onto the podium. The lowest that the 93 has finished thus far this season is second. They've had 2 wins, 2 second places. Could be off the podium for the first time this season, although if anything happens between these two, that's not what's going to happen.
It's consistency that wins championships at the end of the day. So even a 5th place for the 93 car should be pretty nice, given that they have a full race win distance to the 2nd place cars, shared currently by the 91 Coanda and the Kova number 7. Of course, Kova out of the points after that contact with, I believe it was Arnage competition in their pink BMW. So it looks like the 91 will start to close the gap in terms of points to the 93. They are also closing the gap to Cooper Webster, now down to 1.7 seconds, continuously chipping away, but with 9 minutes left to go. As Murray Walker always used to say, it's one thing to close up, it's another thing to pass, and time is running out for the Australian Joshua Rogers.
I'm actually surprised that Jack Sedgwick has not been able to remain closer to the battle ahead. I don't know if he's been lapping faster than Dane Warren directly ahead. I'll pull that up. It was a 28.0 on the previous lap and 27.9, so no, not catching. And that's a bit of a surprise because started out at the earliest stages of this, closing up to this pack, being on the back end of it, and maybe potentially getting a podium for the Ferrari that struggled quite a lot this season. Certainly struggled a lot at Barcelona when they were upside down on lap 2, lap 1. Yeah, they're just not able to keep pace with the 3 ahead.
And you mentioned earlier, let's talk about Altus Esports very quickly here, Lewis. And no points to speak of course, disqualification from both of the races in race weekend number 1. They missed the action last time around with their real-world commitment. If things hold as they are, 26 points gained for them, because of course a bonus point for the fastest lap in qualifying. They would make their way, I should say, into the top 10 in the championship standings. That's prize money on the line, side by side. Around the outside, it becomes the inside. Now Maniti gets on through Mercedes, Audi. I'm not sure what happened to Vendaval, but something happened there, as he's a Kevin Ellis Jr. trying to make the move as well.
Boot's going to get through and get past on Tim Matska, so no move happening up towards the front, but this is looking very, very feisty. Coming through the middle, the Apex car, and now you've got the 2 Urano. This has been terrible for Vendaval. Now they're dropping right the way. They could end up at the back end of this train in 14th spot. They were much further up the road, and that's how quickly it can go when you're pushed out of line around here.
I'm trying to go and see what happened there. Was it a slowdown or was it a mistake? It might have been a mistake, you know.
It's a mistake.
Oh, and well, one mistake, it just all goes downhill from there. And Vendaval, they were sitting quite comfortably up there in 8th position. They now dropped to 13th. 5 spots lost in just 1 lap. 7 minutes left to go. I think the battle for the race lead is kind of extinguished because it was 2 seconds once more. Joshua Rogers is running out of time, but this is all for points-paying positions, and these guys are fighting for their share of $25,000.
I don't think it'll be too much of a worry. I mean, ideally the 91 would like to take the victory and then score 15 points over well, I wouldn't be 15, it would be 14 actually, 11 points I believe for 5th spot. But at this point they're still scoring a good, 6, 7, 8, 9 points more than their teammates, which is important because if you do that again and again and again, you're chipping away at that 30-point lead that their teammates had in that number 93 in the championship. And as I say, we're approaching the halfway point of the season. We've still got another race before we get there, and who knows how it's going to open up. By the way, Corson Racing and Williams Esports Razor have been battling out over the final point. They've switched again and again and again. They've just switched once again, and Corson Racing, who I think we could say are not having a great day right now after the pace that we were kind of expecting from them, looking to maybe score a single point from this race.
Yeah, you know, I did maybe expect a bit more from them given the practice pace as well, but the Ferrari of Jack Sedgwick has shown that the Ferrari has pace. It's BMW first, Porsche second, Audi third, Lamborghini fourth, Porsche in fifth, and then the Ferrari in sixth. The highest of the Mercedes is Pash Gergis, the Greek driver, in eighth position in the 18 car. So there you can see on the left side those manufacturers. It is always great to see a true mix, and the pre-qualifying format really meant that these drivers weren't locked into their favorite car. They had to find and pick the car that gave them the most chance of making it into this 30-car field. Right-hand side, you can see the battle for second. Left-hand side of your screen, Zach Campbell is coming under pressure.
Certainly is, and that is a lot of pressure. And with 5 minutes left to go in the race, you're going to expect there's going to be something that will happen. Like I've said before, the 5 minutes ticks over to, oh, the white flag's out, oh, the race is over. Very, very quickly. It happens so fast in the blink of an eye around here, no matter how fast you are blinking. And once again, Williams Esports Razor and Core switched positions, and it's the Porsche that gets up inside the points, at least for now, but I'm sure that'll switch again a couple more times. Thrilling battle down there, but at the moment, this is the thing, is that you're focused on gaps, you're focused on timing, you're focused on what's going on around you, and you can't take your eyes off the race. This track bites if you do, and I think we've seen that from a few drivers of just pushing it a little bit too far over the track limits.
I will say, battle for that single point in 15th position is not just between the 5 and the 33. You've got Carl Janssen in the 32, ready to pounce if any mistakes are made. Biela Racing Team and Kova all in the mix. For Kova, they'll be wanting that championship point. For Kevin Ellis Jr., he is also looking very feisty. He wants to try and get that podium away from the Audi in front, in towards turn number 5. He's going to look to the inside, but a bit too far behind. Look who's behind them. They're ready to take advantage. That 93 car has closed the gap as here we go. It's a run down in towards turn 7. Who's going to get it done? Inside line for the Audi. Can Ellis Jr. sweep around the outside? He's going to try and make it work. He makes it stick. What a move from Kevin Ellis Jr.
Yeah, fantastic effort. That was really, really nicely done. Clean, so close to picking up a slowdown penalty as well. So close to allowing Dane Warren to be a part of it on the left-hand side. But by the way, before we saw what was an enormous train for the final points paying position. What's going to happen with Ellis Jr. here? I thought he might have just overdone the hairpin there, but out of it, they are okay. And I was knocking them a little bit, but Inex back a part of this battle properly, breaking the slipstream. Ellis Jr. just trying to keep that RHG Esports Junior car not only at bay, but stop them from closing in too much. Only realistically a couple more laps to go. It'll be 3 I do believe from my calculations, and that's a lot of time. That is still plenty of time, plenty of corners, and you really want to break away quickly. He's praying that Dane Warren gets more a part of this.
It is close. I don't know if it's going to be 2 or 3 laps. I'll watch for the leader when he comes across the line the next time around and see where he is. That's Kova getting past Biela and trying to make his way into that fight for that final points-paying position as Vendaval loses another place now, down to 14th. Not sure if there's damage to the Audi and the number 9 machine, but here comes Biela Racing Team to try and fight this one back. All it does is hold up Tumis Tatala, now 1.4 seconds behind. The cars in front sent under the brakes from RHG in their Porsche, but nothing doing there. Meanwhile, I am watching closely because Jordan Caruso and Cooper Webster, they are trying to hold on to try and take their first victory on the season, and it's looking very good for them as they come in through the hairpin. It's going to be close. I do think you're right, Lewis. 2 laps to go this time around.
And to be fair, when you've got a gap like them, I know obviously there's that threat of, oh, what if you make a mistake? What if you get a slowdown? Who cares? You won't, because if you're in this level of control, you are just on top of it. You are in the best form that you've been, and you want to carry that all the way through. With 1 minute and 30 seconds, they've already started the lap, so it will be the penultimate lap of the race that they're on. These drivers are all starting, and that's important because, like you say, for everyone else, they're sat there trying to calculate this as well. How many more opportunities do I have? How long do I have to defend for? It is a huge part of it.
And it's only 1.5 seconds here, so I mean, if anything does happen, you said it's unlikely for any sort of a mistake to come out of the number 43 car, but if that slowdown does happen, if there's any sort of wiggle here through turn number 5, it has opened the door for the Australians to battle it out for race victory.
A lot of damage on the front end of that car. I will say. No, obviously, now this is the thing that shows how much the damage the curbs can do, because this car hasn't been near anyone all day. It's just been them versus the track, and there's already quite a bit of damage on the front end of their M4, and I suspect that that's going to be, like I say, the theme of the race that will follow this as well. Remember that we've got another hour race to do, another 20-minute qualifying, another time to see these drivers hit the racetrack. And all the drivers that are in the car now, they will be starting the next race as well. So that's where things are going to get very, very interesting. And once again, Core and Williams switch position, and Core retake the final points paying position onto the final lap of the race.
I'm just watching right now. Is there any chance we get the checkered flag this time? I don't think so, because there's still plenty of time on the board. Sometimes the iRacing white flag calculation is made on average lap time. There you go. Barney, the flagman, does indeed have the white flag in his hands. It is one more trip around Circuit Zolder to see if Logitech Gioltas can hold on to race victory. Around the outside, Zach Campbell gets on past the number 81 car. Wonderful move there, getting past the Frenchman Jeremy Bouteloup. On board we ride with Dylan Scrivens. He tries to get one on the Mercedes here too.
Yeah, again, waiting for something to happen bigger between them to maybe get themselves a top 10. But there comes a send from Scrivens. Might make contact with the 81. It was very, very tight. There's no real pressure from behind, as it's his teammate in the Lamborghini that is the car in the rear. And a fair amount of space between them. Was a good effort from Dylan Scrivens, but no way to pass right now. I think I get the vibe as well that Zach Campbell might have just broken away from this little grouping just enough to hang on to the top 10, and the points that it holds, 6 points for a 10th place finish, which is a pretty tasty treat.
Wonderful timing, I mean, to just spot that right time. And that's the other thing about a race like this. It's finding the right time to make the pass, because you don't want to leave yourself open for some sort of an issue, as Vendaval have had. They have dropped themselves out of the race. I am not sure if Vendaval in the 9 car had some sort of major damage, but it's promoted Core into 14th. Williams will now sit in that final points paying position, but out front for the first time this season, it's the Australian duo. You can see the excitement, you can see the relief. Cooper Webster across the line to take victory in race 5 here in the 2021 VRS SCO Sprint Masters. Oh, this is wonderful to see, just the excitement, the emotion. But a reminder, Lewis, they've got to do this all over again with 60 minutes of action still to go.
But one thing that I will say is I am genuinely very, very impressed, not only with the speed that they've had, but the speed that both of them have had. By the way, VRS SCO and simsport, they moved up a couple of positions on that last lap and then switched back down again. I think it might have just been as they'd crossed the line, so it's pretty tight as we're seeing this battle pack cross the line. Outside of the points for Kova, pretty high drama. But yeah, for Logitech Gioltas Esports, it was pole position for Cooper Webster, but then Jordan Caruso was so fast in the early stages of the race. I'm not going to necessarily rule them out from doing the same thing again. It was dominance from them, and I think for the second consecutive race we had that trend of second places translates into race victory, and then last race it was pole position translated into the race victory, and now we've had that 2 times in a row. I get the feeling that it may well be Logitech Gioltas Esports again, at least on their pace. They are looking almost peerless.
And well, it's always great to get that emotion. Caruso was almost overcome, and I can't wait to see now what he'll do in qualifying. He'll have to finish race number 2. I will say, Lewis, both of us were wrong. I mean, we both predicted Coanda cars, different ones. Logitech Gioltas Esports like to come and show us just how wrong we can be on occasion.
They got the start right. That's what it was about. It was a bit of confusion at the start. Of course, a slight change to how things are done. Race Control pulled the green flag out. It was done manually, as it has been before, but it was done by Race Control, and they just pounced. The outside line into turn 1 just worked for them. That's the thing, though, is if they get pole position again, is it going to be that easy on that run into turn 1? I think not.
So here are your unofficial race results. It's 1.3 at the line between the 2 Australians, but it is Logitech Gioltas that win in their BMW. The next highest BMW, just for your record, was down in 17th position, so just shows that they really found something in that car. Handled the curves at Zolder very nicely. Rogers in second with Kevin Ellis Jr. for the Apex Racing team rounding out the podium. It was a late race move that got him past Julian Sonnen. The RHE juniors have been very strong in their Audi so far over the summer. Dane Warren, the championship leader, rounds out the top 5, but you can see the gap to Jack Sedgwick in the Inex Racing Ferrari. The Ferrari has been relatively strong compared to its initial couple of rounds. Let's see how things go for race number 2 in that Inex Racing number 57. Urano and Andre Melchers in 7th, with Pash Gergis in 8th. Tim Matska in the big green machine finishes in 9th, with Zach Campbell rounding out the top 10. That late race move really found at the perfect opportunity. In 11th, it is Urano with Dylan Shrivens, Lewis Najner in 12th, the teammate right behind them. And like you mentioned, Lewis, Jeremy Bousseloup, the Frenchman, dropping a number of positions on the last lap. He rounds out in 13th position. Corentin Gunes and Ate Kupinen for Core Sim Racing and Williams Esports Razor complete the points-paying positions before you get to Carl Janssen and Tumas Tatala, of course, second in the championship coming into this one for the Finnish outfit. Let's see where they'll drop after the conclusion of 60 more minutes of action. Only one Biela Racing team car in today's field. That's the number 45 Lamborghini. They're in 18th with Thibaut Casabon 19th. Ross McFarlane recovering from Daniel Ferguson's earlier incident with Energy Sim Sport to round out the top 20. Eric Goldner, Ricardo Ferreira, Vendaval Sim Racing, of course, with their late race retirement. One lap down, no points on offer for them in their Audi. Before we get to the rest of the retirees, LEGO Technic Esports crew, Inertia Euro RC, Phil Denez. That was, of course, that lap 1 chaos that also took out Energy Sim Sport in the number 72. And Kenny Rooson's a separate incident there. He finishes in 28th. 2 non-starters, it's the Biela Racing team, number 46 and the number 45, which I think is shown as the 11 because they misregistered in their car. Maybe explains why we didn't see Sven Haase taking to the grid. So 1 race down, 1 still to go. And well, what a race 1 we had here. And not necessarily the most side-by-side action, Lewis, but really does get me excited for race number 2 because typically that's been the more exciting of the races throughout the weekend.
Well, you've got to expect that VRS SCO and SimSport, they will have spotted the pace that Logitech Gialtas Esports have had here, and you know that, yes, there's no time realistically between race 1 and race 2, but they will find a way of responding. They will push that a little bit further. They'll think, okay, they did that on strategy, we need to do this, we need to get up there and fight them in this way, and there is chance to respond, and if there is a team that can do so, it is VRS SCO and SimSport, but Logitech Gialtas Esports right now are very, very in control here at Zolder. They may sweep it, race wins and stuff. We saw Kova win the first race of the season. It was Coanda all the way to this point. It was pole positions all the way through for Coanda, but this time Logitech took pole position and the race win.
So here are some replays from today's action as we take a look first at the start. It was single file from the top 4. This is then that big incident. Energy Sim Sport BS competition with a slowdown getting together, causing a bit of a track blocker. Number of cars able to slither their way on through. At first it was the RAG Porsche that had to get on the anchors. There you go. And then Luca Kita in the Biela Racing team car didn't have to slow down as much. Phil Denez made his way straight down onto pit lane in the number 89 car and immediately retired. Can they continue their run of podiums in race number 2? There was Pure Sims having a small mistake. Plenty of action here down into turn number 5.
Yeah, there was a lot of this style at turn 5 mistakes there. A bit of a dive there from Charlie Collins, starting the number 93, trying to make progress, getting by the Apex Lamborghini that was having race the season. It was Mitchell de Jong ahead of that, though. It was seeming to struggle on speed. Arnage Competition would hit the back of the Energy Sim Sports car that would make its mistake. And whilst that was happening, the LEGO Technic car was also having its own incident with Core Sim Racing, who go for a spin themselves. Here's a look at that as up and over the curbs, side by side through the turn 5 chicane. Never really works, and that was Mac Backham going off the road. Kova were not having the greatest day, and Ricardo Rico would really hammer that one home as Antiohola would be spent off down at turn 3. Not great for Kova. They were once our championship leaders. They won the first race of the season. Well, they really wish for that time back. That was 2 weeks ago, and things have not gone well since then.
Here, I think, is a look coming at the late dive from Kevin Ellis Jr. to steal that final podium spot away from the RAG Junior car. You can just see sends it deep under the brakes. In fact, no, that's not the actual move getting done. That was just one of his many attempts as he tried to find a way past such a tricky place to try and get the pass done, but eventually he did make things work.
bit of action as well down the order as Vendaval and VRS SCO, then also the Maniti racing car to Matska behind the wheel of that one would send it through on the inside. Is Zach Campbell making some progress in the final stage of the race to work their way up the order inside the top 10. It was that Vendaval car though having the issues, having the mistakes. They were dropping backwards. They were running very, very well up in around about 8th position, but then just dropped further back. Here's that move that you were talking about around the outside from Kevin Ellis Jr. Absolute perfection.
Really just found the opportunity, and kudos to Sonnen as well for just giving him enough room and realizing when things were done and when he had to concede, at least for the time being. And then look in his rearview mirrors for Dane Warren in the 93 car, the championship leader, trying to get up into that 4th spot. Inex in their Ferrari lurking in the background as well. The first time we've seen the Ferrari, I think, really be strong. Not to say they weren't strong in Barcelona, Lewis, but really, I think the Ferrari was one of the strongest, is maybe the strongest we've seen it so far. But at the end of the day, the BMW, the only one in the points-paying positions, it was Altus that won today in race 1.
Yeah, reigning supreme right now, but that gap was coming down. The thing that we can really take from it, though, is that yes, it was coming down, but boy, did Cooper Webster have a response up his sleeve. And when that gap was coming down, it's 5 seconds, then it was 4, then it was 3, then it went down to 2, and it remained at 2 until the end of the race. They judged that one to absolute perfection and to hold firm with the pressure from such a strong outfit behind. Wow, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, hats off, incredible.
And again, these guys have to do it all over again. And just a reminder, as we head our way into that qualifying session for race number 2, that VRS and LEGO have teamed up to give away a LEGO Technic Porsche 911 RSR for every single race weekend. Me and Lewis, of course, do have one of these right next to us, and that build-off will commence. We've got a month-long break between now and the next round from Monza, and we'll have hopefully a completed kit to show you. You can enter by visiting giveaway.sportscaropen.com, and of course, the season-long giveaway of a VRS Direct Force Pro wheelbase. And the best thing is, Lewis, it's free. Who doesn't love free stuff?
Exactly, and it's cool as well. It's not as if it's just a little t-shirt or a hat or something. I mean, how cool is that? I can't wait to build that. I think it's. I'm still going a week and 2 days. You think 2 days? I'm gonna go a week and 2.
I tell you what, on the other side of a quick break here, I'm going to show you some of the fun stuff that I've got from Porsche. Not necessarily from LEGO, but I think you'll appreciate this one, Lewis. While we wait to get into that next qualifying session, let's take a look at this wonderful track, the other famous track in Belgium, Circuit Zolder, on board with Sindre Setzels.
Hi and welcome to the VRS Circuit Walk for race 3 of the VRS SCO Sprint Masters at Zolder. I am VRS driver coach Sindre Setzels, driver of the number 31 Mercedes AMG GT3 for Core Sim Racing. Zolder is one of the smaller tracks on the schedule at just over 4 kilometers in length, with some of the shortest straights on the entire schedule. Passing will be at a premium, so qualifying will be hugely important. Join me as I look at some of the interesting corners and challenges that the drivers will face at Zolder. Turn 5 and the first chicane is one of the trickiest corners on the schedule. You need to pick your line very carefully and carry as much speed as you can for the run to turn 6. That means bouncing both curves and being able to stick the landing. This requires precise placement of the car by all the drivers and completely dialed in suspension setup to keep traction on the landing. Turn 7. The second chicane at turn 7 is deceivingly tricky. It's not easy to consistently spot how much you can cut lap on lap. Plus it's bumpy at the apex, so you have to place the car perfectly, all while getting the throttle down for the run to the hairpin. Turn 8 and the hairpin itself is quite straightforward. It's a tight hairpin, pretty straightforward, but it's likely also the best passing area. With it being tight though, it's quite easy to defend, but that might open up a move into the final chicane. The final chicane itself is again pretty straightforward. However, it's the pit entry here that is an interesting choke point. Cars taking the chicane will likely be braking much earlier than the ones trying to get onto pit lane. Getting caught up in traffic will probably lose you about a second on time on entry to the pit lane if you were to get stuck behind a car that's taking the normal line in the final chicane. So this will be one of the most important races to time your pit entry so you don't lose too much time in the race. Now let's queue up the VRS onboard and ride a lap around Zolder. So we're here at Zolder, heading out of the final corner onto the front stretch, moving over to the right hand side of the track before turn 1, braking right before the coke barriers on the right ends, and then turn into the corner, hit the curb on the inside, and use the curb on the outside and move swiftly over to the left hand side of the track before braking immediately and then turning into the right hander. Use the curb on the outside, don't need to track out to the curb on the inside, and just use the curb on the inside to minimize the distance traveled. Brake at the exit road on the left and then turn it into the right hander, and use all the curb on the inside and the outside to maximize the corner speed. And then we're heading into the first chicane, braking at about 75 meters down to third gear. Use both curbs on the left and right side, and then run it all over the hill, full throttle. Move over to the left hand side before opening up the second chicane, and then using both curbs here as well. Use as much as you can, especially on that left hand side, to get the exit you want, and then full throttle out and over this crest right here, and then move over to the left hand side of the track. Brake at 100 meters down through the gears, low speed, probably the best overtaking spot on the circuit, and then full throttle out of the hairpin, run towards the final chicane. We start braking between the 100 meter board and the bridge, nibble at the first curb and then use all of the second curb, run it all the way out to the curb on the exit, and then move slowly over to the right hand side to open up turn 1 for the next lap of Zolder. Hope you all enjoyed this edition of the VRS Sprint Masters track walk from Zolder. Be sure to tune in this Saturday for round 3 of the series, and I hope to see you all there.
And so far we've had onboard track walkthroughs with first Joshua Rogers, then last week Jamie Fook, and now another of the VRS coaches. This time it was Sindre Setsols. I did say I wanted to show something off, Lewis. I'm not sure where you're going to put your Lego 911. I know exactly where mine is going, next to this little beauty. Of course, I love the pink livery, but pink pig livery, I should say. I saw in the YouTube chat a couple of guys were saying, why can't we get our cars onto Lego? Would be an interesting thing to build a Lego model of your car and then get your own livery onto it as well. That would be a lot of fun.
I think it would. I mean, we're getting to that point. I mean, now we can get a nice die cast. Thanks, George Simmons. Obviously, fantastic to see your liveries being put on various cars. I think Lego is the next step, isn't it? I mean, if you have enough time, I guess you could, you could make it work. You got to spray paint some Lego pieces before you put it together, but go for it.
You can do anything, I guess, with Lego if you really set your mind to it. Qualifying has just gotten underway. Let's go ahead and take a look at our driver wall once more so you can see your onboard looks with every single one of these drivers. Once more, the contrasting looks. You can see someone like Martin Kroenke behind the wheel focused on the driving. A couple of other drivers just sitting there waiting for their teammates to finish up qualifying so they can start the race. Because like we said, Lewis, there is nowhere to hide in a series like this. You have to do the qualifying. You have to start a race. You have to finish a race. You have to be an all-round, well-rounded driver.
Yeah, it's the ability to deliver every single time. We spoke about it in the weeks previous, and you might get bored of hearing it again and again and again. But to reiterate the point, it is incredibly important to be able to deliver in all aspects. Said it last round about in an endurance terminology, it would be you've got your night specialists, your day-night. Night-day transition specialists, you've got your day specialists qualifying, your triple stint specialists. You need all of that here. You need to be good at everything. Start of the race, end of the race, qualifying as well. It's about managing it all. And right now, especially after that first race, it does seem that Logitech Autos Esports are the ones that are very much in control of all aspects here at Zolder. But remember that 91 car has been moving forward again and again and again. They came into this as realistically favourites for the championship, and whilst the 93 didn't exactly have a bad race, the 91 are starting to reiterate their point on why they are so good.
And so with about 5 minutes done in qualifying, we've got our first lot of times in. It is Quintin Violate that is sitting at the top in that R8G Junior Audi. They have looked very, very strong over the course of the weekend so far. In second, it's the number 93 championship leading Charlie Collins with Mitchell de Jong in third for the second VRS Coanda car. Then you've got a Urano fourth and fifth. Logitech Gioltas, best now is 7th position, but lots of time for them to pick up the pace, but of course it's a very different sort of a track condition to what we saw in the first part of qualifying. Still only 18 degrees in the air, but the track temperature, Lewis, up to 34 degrees Celsius.
That's exactly the expectation. I said it was around about 8, 9 degrees that we saw hotter yesterday, and we're seeing the same kind of thing. It's 12:30 track time at the moment, and so that is the expectation, that we are going to see a bit of a slower track. I'm not going to say it's going to be around about a second. It's around about 7/10 at the moment. I think we're more talking, based on yesterday anyway, of around about 4/10 of a second. So I'm expecting a good couple of tenths faster than where we're currently sat. So more time still to come, which you'd expect in the first 6 minutes of the session. Everyone's putting in bankers right now.
Well, are they really bankers, or if anything, Lewis, are we potentially going to see the conditions like we saw in Q1 continue to get hotter? So you really do need to nail, I think, your first lap times here, because you might risk the track temperature rising to a couple degrees more. And, well, the rough average, or the rule of thumb here on iRacing is every 10 degrees Celsius is about a second of lap time drop-off. Of course, at larger tracks, the drop-off will be slightly more, but if we do increase a couple of degrees, that's a couple of tenths of a second that then you have to try and wrangle around this very short racetrack.
Yeah, you got to treat it in that sense. You've got to treat it a bit more like a Super Bowl session. You've only got one lap, not quite to that degree. I think you've got enough time to put in a banker lap and then put really push for the next couple of laps. We're seeing at the moment Logitech DLC Sports Jordan Caruso behind the wheel right now, who did such a good job at the early stages, pulled out a 5-second lead over Mitchell de Jong. Currently sat in 7th spot, a couple of tenths off of pole, but remember that they improved in the second half of the session. It was them that moved up a bit later on, and I get the feeling they might be doing the same thing here. There, you can see with the heat and stuff of the track how slow this outlap is. They are cruising right now. This is a bit slower than how they were going in the previous race.
We're what, about 7/10 off right now, the pole from race number 1, if I'm remembering correctly. So right around on that 1 second margin, although these of course are the best drivers in the iRacing service. They will have built the setups to maybe also compensate for that. This is the interesting thing about this kind of a race format, where each of the two races is slightly different. You can't just have a car that works in the colder conditions. You need a car that's going to work as the track temperature rises and the tires start to scream in agony that little bit more.
Oh, to give you a bit of a reference, you're speaking of like the time differential between them. Let's not speak of the pulsar. Let's speak of the car in itself, the one that is sat on pole position, that number 2 car, and the difference between their Q1 and Q2 thus far, because it is actually in that 3/10 range, 4/10 range that I was talking about. In Q1, they set a lap time of a 27.154, so they are around about 4/10 slower. Now, if you take into account what the actual pole time was, which is a 26.812. If you go 4/10 slower than that, it does mean there might be a few more tenths out there. But like you say, the session that goes on, the track will get hot. Of course, a lot of cars running around it. It does build a lot of temperature. With the sun beating down it, again, more temperature built. And I'm not sure how much faster they can go. I still think that a 27.535 is not going to be the pole time here. I just don't quite know what it'll be. I'm going to go with the 27.3.
So you're saying about 2/10 in terms of track evolution, drivers just finagling some more time in the lap cars. Once more, it is exceptionally close throughout the entire grid. I mean, down from 1st to 25th position, just 7/10 of a second. You're talking about gaps between each of these cars in the hundreds and thousandths of a second as BS Competition goes up into 9th. It's Phil Dinez doing the qualifying duties this time around after his slowdown penalty at the start of race 1 and the subsequent stack up that it kind of caused. Still waiting for Jordan Caruso to come across and set a quicker lap time, but he's heading himself out of pit road right now. Look at Nicholas Laubish in towards turn number 5. How much curb does he use? Oh, quite a considerable amount there in the second part of the corner, Lewis.
Yeah, a lot. I think that would be classified as a lot. We're speaking in the track guide of kissing some of the curbs and then knowing which ones you can use and abuse and which ones you need to just kiss, caress, and look after. That second one is sort of a 50-50. You do need to smash it, but you do also need to back out and control a little bit. On board with Nicholas Laubish down into the hairpin, and that is a little bit wide. Not great.
Let's see if he can improve, though. A 1:27.679 has him in 4th position, 1.5 tenths behind the current pole position as Kova into 5th. They're looking to rebound from their last race. Disappointing one from their point of view. Inex up into 8th as well. The times are coming in thick and fast with still 9.5 minutes left to go. Laubish across the line. Does he improve? Yes, he does not, excuse me. It's a 1:29.565. That's almost 2 seconds off the pace.
Yeah, I think Optimus and Hairpin backed out of it and was trying to get a second lap out of it. There is Caruso departing pit lane and being smart, being wise, allowing all of the other drivers that are coming round to know, I'm not rejoining the racetrack right now. You had the simracing Ferrari Viscari Rin just coming round, and you just want to let them continue on. Carnage competition, that's a bit more like it, up to 7th. And this is the thing, is this kind of session, all the BMW teams now know that the BMW is a good car around here. Probably, they would have known where they sat before this, but it just gives that extra little push when you see, oh, BMW won. Okay, I will push this a little bit further. And let's be honest, all of the other BMWs disappointed in the in race 1. Kova were in 17th spot. They were the highest placed BMW. BS competition out on lap 1. Valkyrie out on lap 1. Carnage just weren't in control. Now is the time where they can respond and they can get back involved.
Williams Esports Razor into 15th position. Question for you, Lewis. Would you rather be starting or finishing a race here? Because obviously you don't get the choice about how you want, if you want to do it. You have to do both over the course of the weekend. But we did ask some of the drivers, and it was interesting just to kind of get their perspective on whether they like to be the one charging at the start or the one charging at the end, because it is two very different propositions, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, I mean, around here it's more of a, there's more of a counter here than most. I'd want to be the one finishing the race. I feel like I could deal with the pressure, but when you're on that run into turn 1, where the race start in race 1 was actually pretty tame, and unlike what we saw in the GT4s yesterday in race 1 there, where it was, like I said, it was 4 wide going into turn 1, that's where your race can end very, very, very quickly indeed. It's a hard track to come back from any early carnage. So I'd want to be in the car at the end of the race. You'd have to do both, but that's not a great line for Daniel Ferguson.
And of course, Ferguson was the one who went around after that contact with one of the Energy SimSport Ferraris. You can see the Coanda Porsche just letting them on through, trying to find his own bit of clean air. It's a difficult place to find clean air. It's only about 4-kilometer track, 4.010 in its current configuration. So really not much space for 30 cars to be going around and trying to slow down what you sometimes see in F1 is the stack up into the final sector. We're kind of seeing a stack up in the middle sector here, especially down in towards turn 7.
Well, I mean, they're just preparing themselves. You want a lap with, you want a little bit of slipstream. You just don't want enough. You just want a little bit just to pull you along, but not too much, because it's not about dirty air. It's about what if that car goes 3 or 4 tenths slower? What if that car's slower than I am? What if that catcher, I'm on a great lap going into the final chicane, and I have to back out of it? You want to avoid that. And around here, it's very easy to have those kind of things from other cars. And yeah, you got to avoid all that stuff, avoid the distraction, and just do your own lap. And with it being such a short lap, 29 cars around here, you're likely to trip over other cars.
Looks like we only have 29 cars here now. I think the one that's missing is one of the Bila Racing cars. They, of course, did miss part of they missed the first weekend due to some health issues. I think it was Patrick Heinrich that was the driver feeling under the weather. We hope he is doing better and hope to see him back in action. Gioltas Esports, they're up into 4th now. Still about a 10.5 away from your pole position Audi. RHE Junior is doing a smashing job in the early stages of this qualifying session to lay down the benchmark. There hasn't been any improvement at this point in time, and the track temperature, Lewis, now up a single degree. It's 35 degrees on the track.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is getting a little bit hotter. I think it was 35 a bit earlier, dropped down to 34, now back up to 35 degrees. So it's pretty toasty out there. I'm not quite to the level that you could fry an egg on, but it will be uncomfortably hot as we ride on board with Charlie Collins qualifying. Had always done this. We were kind of asking questions about the switch between them. Collins and Dane Warren are doing it the same way round. Charlie Collins had always done the second qualifying session. It's the 91 that switched. Mitchell de Jong is in this qualifying session.
Does mean that Rogers is going to start this race. That will let de Jong finish race number 2. So interesting to see. That's why I kind of asked you, Lewis, because I think it's a kind of interesting game here. How do you want to start the weekend? How do you want to finish the weekend? And really, I'm of the opinion that I'd rather start a race. I really enjoy the chaos that sometimes comes on those first laps as you just try and find those pockets of space that let you get positions. Even at a track like this at Zolder, it is very much a distinct possibility to gain not a couple, but maybe even more than a couple of positions over the course of the first couple of kilometers. Look at Laubish in his Audi through in towards the hairpin. It's looking like a decent lap time right now for the Urano Esports team. Once more in the second qualifying session, they are having a number of cars up there in the top 10. They'll be hoping to carry that forward into the race a bit better than they did last time around from sunny Spain. Final chicane still to go, and in fact it's Laubish down onto pit road, so this will be his chance to get those tires on the car and head himself back out onto track for one final qualifying attempt.
Yeah, I've got to say, with the Audis and stuff, we're expecting them to do quite well here because it is an Audi on pole position. I wasn't sure that 535 was going to hold. Right now, that's looking pretty decent because no one's quite been able to match it. Logitech G Esports have improved up to 4th, you know, that's great for them. They're up there now, they're in the mix again. But the pole position looks like, you know, a tenth and a bit. Not quite out of reach because it's still got another couple of laps, but it's a tighter session than the previous. But R8G are in control right now. I think it was VRS SCO who improved quite late in the session, so we'll have to keep our eyes very much on them back in session 1. But now, track temperature up to 36, so it is getting hotter, which means the track is theoretically getting slower.
29 cars separated by 0.671 of a second. That is incredible. And other than 27th and 28th positions where still waiting for Maxime Brienne to come across the line to set some sort of representative lap time given the pace we saw from the 98 in race number 1. All of these gaps once more hundreds if not thousands of a second. Let's see if the Lamborghini of the 98 can go faster this time around.
Certainly needs to. Like I say, this is the thing, around a circuit like this, you're in the danger zone at all points. Look at how close the session is, though. My goodness. Just, you know, you think you've set a time 7/10 off the pole position and you will basically last. That's rough. 3/10 off and you're right down there, even outside of the points paying positions for inertia. If this was a race, it's so very, very tight around here. All these teams, all these drivers will be starting their final few laps of the session. A bit more like it from the 98's teammate. The number 99 jumps up into 14th spot. Maxime Brienne only good enough for 15th. Coursing Racing, though, showing that the car and track is fast enough, up to 6th.
That was a great lap from Ascari Rene. Mitchell de Jong, I think, starting a lap time now, so with a minute 50 left on the clock, you might still have an opportunity to go for a second if this doesn't work out, but of course the tires might not be at their peak. In through turn number 2, the yellow trimmed VRS Porsche coming through in towards turn 4. This is such a fun corner, Lewis. You have to really commit to the entry, because if you don't, you end up in the gravel, and we've seen that during the race a number of times in race number 1.
And whilst in the race, it's actually not that big a deal because you don't leave there too slow if you go into it. Yes, you're a little bit slower, but it's not actually that much. But in qualifying, it'll invalidate your laps. It'll give you a 1x and the lap's cancelled at that point. So you've got to make sure not to do it now. Listening as we're riding on board, coming over the crest, hasn't fancied that, has backed out of it, and could be a smart move because realistically there's enough time. If you cool the tyres down early enough, you can go on the attack on the next run, which will be the final lap of the session for them. Quentin Violette coming around the final chicane. Here they are for the R8G Esports Junior car. He's on pole position right now and looking very, very good indeed. Ready to start the final lap with Bork from this previous lap they've just completed from the Lego Technic car. Maybe there's more pace in the tank.
Don't know if the tires will really have enough to do another lap here, even though they were 1 second slower. With the increasing track temperatures, who knows what they've done in terms of setup. I would assume, Lewis, that they've all had to build a cold setup and a warm setup, both for qualifying and the race. There is so much effort that's going into this competition from these teams. These are 30 of the best across of the iRacing service.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about the very best teams of drivers. They're prepared for all sorts of scenarios, and right now, I would have assumed they would have built hot and cold setups in a sense for all of the rounds so far, because there has been a temperature differential between two races in all of the rounds we've done so far. Look at those improvements. Inex up to what was 7th, very quickly 8th as Urano Esports HKM jump up onto the second row of the grid, dropping Logitech Giautas Esports down to 5th.
That was Daniel Pastor in the Lamborghini for Urano, another one of the outfits that has multiple teams but spread across the various manufacturers. Quintin Vialate right on board with the number 2. Final corner upcoming. Is he going to take to the pit entry? Yes, he is. That is going to be qualifying done then. Provisional pole. I don't know if anyone's on a flyer and can go quicker here.
I thought I was having a massive crash in the background, but no, it's just Barney throwing a flag around. Absolutely going for it as the checkered flag is officially out in the second qualifying session. Here we look at Mitchell de Jong. He's got Antti Ahola directly ahead, who's having a slightly better qualifying session here. They're in 9th spot at the moment in that BMW, a tenth and a bit off of pole position, nearly 2 tenths. Can Mitchell de Jong improve though? Off of the front row of the grid in that 3rd spot. Not even going to try. Comes down to pit lane. I think the track, for the most part, just got slower. Other people still had pace in the tank and were able to respond and try and improve, but for the most part, no one found the time.
Ahola is 2 tenths off his best lap before that. Is there anyone else who I think has a chance? I'm not sure. We're watching Phil Denez for the BS competition team. Currently 13. That's going to be a hard charge for the Zebra if they want to try and continue this string of podiums in the second race of the weekend. It was some very staunch defending in each of the first couple of rounds. For Phil Denez, he'll be finishing the second race. Let's see what he's going to do. He's down onto pit road as well, just practicing that entry. But of course, Denez is not going to have to be doing that in today's action. So, 20 seconds left to go. It is an interesting top 10 here, but there are some new faces from what we saw in round number 1, Lewis.
Well, VRS SCO had swept the pole positions coming into this round, but here at Zolder, it's not been about them. Logitech G-Autos Esports took the first one, the second one going to R8G Sports Junior. Bit of a surprise, but can they do the win as well? Pole position to the race win has translated in the previous 2 races before this. Can it be 3 in a row?
So let's turn up the most famous song in esports for the second time today. Let's go trackside at the circuit Zolder to take a look at the starting grid for round number 6 in the 2021 VRS SCO Sprint Masters. It is Quintin Vialate, the young Frenchman, on pole, a 1:27.535 that was set in the early stages of qualifying, not improved on by the young Frenchman. Charlie Collins in the number 93, 0.03 of a second separating him from pole. But the championship leader will start on the outside of the front row. The 91 and the 90, it's a Porsche and Lamborghini row number 2 with race number 1 winner on the weekend, Jordan Caruso, qualifying in 5th position. Dylan Shriven's in the Audi for Urano Esports Huawei. He'll line up then in 6th position, with 7th going to Core Sim Racing. Great to see that Ferrari really making leaps and bounds at the circuit Zolder. Jarl Tien, another Ferrari. It's an all-Ferrari row number 8. Watch for the prancing horses, but they'll have to watch behind Antti Ahola and Kova qualifying in 9th. Tuomas Tatila will be a man on a mission to try and get up in towards the podium positions. Arnage competition, they'll round out the top 10 with Ross McFarlane in the Pure Sims Esports Audi in the inside of row number 6. Core Sim Racing on the outside of row number 6 with BS Competition and Valkyrie Esports. It's an all BMW row number 7. Zach Campbell qualifies in 15th position with Vendaval after their struggles at the end of race number 1, trying to rebound from 16th. Energy and Inertia 17th and 18th positions, with 19th going to the Williams Esports Razor cars, one of the biggest movers in race number 1. LEGO Technic Esports, they round out the top 20 with Beeler Racing Euronics and Maniti Racing 21st and 22nd. Row 12, it's Jeremy Bootsloot for the VRS SCO SimSport team with the Energy SimSport number 72 Ferrari. 25th position goes to Urano with the Apex Racing team alongside. Lots of work for Kevin Ellis Jr. to do. Thibaut Casabon, his teammate, the junior, qualified at the front row. He's got a lot of work to do from 27th with Pash Gergis alongside in the number 18 for VRS SCO. Beeler Racing Team Euronics, they round out our 29 car grid. 0.6 of a second, just under 7 tenths, I should say, Lewis, separating 29 cars.
Half a second off though, and you're 28th. That's tough. I've not had that on a field anything as strong as this. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm up there with them, but I have before had a qualifying session where I was 7 tenths off and I was last, and that is frustrating because you think, oh, it's only 7 tenths realistically. It's not that much. You know, you think like sometimes a pace differential, that's sometimes been the difference between 1st and 7th or 8th, but in here there is no room for mistakes. There's no room for errors, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of work, but with the different start rules. We can't see them jumping up 10 positions on the run down towards the run down towards turn 1, especially not around here. You don't want to see 5, 6, 7 wide here. We're going to end in tears.
So let's get those predictions, Lewis, and I'll start once again just to give you some time to think about it. I said the outside of the front row is where our winner was going to be. I'm going to stick with that again because, of course, it's the inside into turn number 1. I'm going to say Dane Warren in that 93 car continues the impressive run for the championship leaders.
I think the 91 are finding their form now. I think they are becoming more a part of it, but you know, I like my form. I like the fact that pole positions translated to a race winner. The slight changes to the race start. I actually think with the pace they showed here that they're matching the slightly hotter conditions of race 2. I think the RAG Sports Junior car should come out on top here.
The only Coanda bias, by the way, in our production booth here today is our producer, Hugo Luis, a former iRacing world champion and one of the founding members of Coanda. I will say there's no Coanda bias here unless you account the fact that Hugo is the one clicking all the buttons. I will say as well, Lewis, we saw the pit stop window very much being crucial, and I think that's going to be the case this time around as well.
Don't rule out that car rolling around in 5th spot. Yes, they didn't have pole position here, but we've spoken how much of a complete package they are at this track, doing so well in race 1. Cooper Webster, pole position earlier in the day, will be starting the car for race 2. Could be doing some decent work here to move into it. It was all about the early stages and that breakaway right now, and that is exactly what the pole sitter, Soyden, has to do. But to pull away from Dane Warren, to pull away from Josh Rogers to the tune of 5 seconds, like Caruso did in the previous race, that is a tall order.
Pace car is down, 60 minutes left to go, and we will reach the halfway point in this 2021 VRS SCO Sprint Masters. Live from the circuit Zolder, what will happen as we enter the starting zone? We wait for the green flag from the race control. We are underway, and this time it is much more chaotic. It's almost 4 wide back in the pack, but as expected, your leader gets a good jump and defends from a second place car sent by Dane Warren. Altus is off into the gravel. BS Competition is around on the opening lap once more. All sorts of carnage back in the pack, but out front, guess who it is? It is not the 93, it's the 91, Joshua Rogers.
Yeah, slow start from the 93. Bold start from Josh Rogers. Sent it down at turn 1. Dylan Scrivens up to 4th spot as well. So Urana have started really, really well on that inside line. Chaos and Carnage at turn 1. We said there that Logitech GLC Esports have been off the road, that BS Competition have been backwards. So much has happened in turn 1. And you can see why there's more going on, though, as there's more contact and crunching. Continuing, Maniti Racing are going round as everyone was slowing down, trying to go through Beeler. No one is on the brakes. It's crazy stuff. Absolutely no one knows what the middle pedal does, and they were just charging in.
I think that was Energy Simsport, the Ferrari that just got clipped as a result of that. A number of cars straight out of the race. I think Urano in the 94 car, the first of our retirements. They did start towards the tail end of things, but in towards the hairpin. Look at this. That's the Lamborghini of the Apex Racing 99. Zach Campbell behind the wheel trying to apply the pressure to Tumas Tattler, and nothing doing. A side-by-side on the exit there, 2 rows deep. Williams Esports Razor trying to hold off the charge from behind, and also looking in front as Arnage Competition. That pink BMW is all over the rear end. And look at that start from guess who? Kevin Ellis Jr. has had a rocket of a launch here to get up 11 positions into 15th spot.
Yeah, and already trying to respond to Cooper Webster. Back up to not far off of the points paying positions. We've got side-by-side down into turn 1. Arnage are going to leave it there. But as this will work out in the favour of Kevin Ellis Jr., just having the outside run and that inside line into turn 2 and just continuing that momentum through. Really nice stuff from the Lamborghini that's already working its way up the order. But that was much more chaotic. Certainly not what we wanted to see. We wanted to see some breathless racing. It certainly was breathless in one way. It was just in the carnage department.
I'm going back to try and take a look, as again, 2 wide, 2 deep. And that's the Porsche for RAG getting past the VRS Coanda 18. Lego Technic number 92 gets on past the Vendaval Sim Racing Audi. Is all sorts of chaos midway through the pack, but there was contact for the Altus car. That's why they got shoved off the road. I think contact for BS Competition, spinning them around. It was crazy. It was chaotic. It's going to be a mess that race control has to take a look at post-race.
Yeah, that is going to be one to pick through. I'm glad I'm not in race control now. They've been on it with various bits of car contact and whatnot, trying to pick them apart and deliver penalties in a fair and just way, and it's very, very hard to do, especially when you've got multiple cars contributing to the carnage. That's exactly what we saw there. We'll take another look at this. So obviously we'll keep our eye not only on the Logitech G Autos Esports car that's squeezing the Ferrari into the wall a bit there, but also keep your eye on BS competitions. They get dived down the inside. There's a contact between the Core Sim Racing Ferrari with the Apex Lamborghini that was in there. I'm pretty sure the Williams Esports Razor car and Energy Sim Sports Ferrari was a part of that. It's just chaos.
I don't know if the Energy SimSport Ferrari got loose or if there was something else that happened to them, but I think that's what happened with the contact with the BS Competition Zebra. Ooh, well, that is a lot of chaos, a lot of carnage. And the other thing that, we didn't take a look at just yet was the Turn 5 incident. You'll take one more look at the replay, and I wonder if Beeler Racing Team just lightly into the back of that Energy SimSport Ferrari, and well, the biggest loser in that whole shebang was Felix Quirnbach in the BS Competition 89. Now watch as we head into turn number 5, Lewis, because Maniti Racing, I'm not sure what happens here, but they go around and then get dragged down the road by that Vendaval Audi.
Yeah, there's a lot that's happening ahead of them. That's the kind of the major thing here. There was a bit of a slowdown. I think the inertia car maybe even was side by side with the yes, there you go. There's a bit of a dive on the Course and Racing Ferrari just ahead of this. There's a bit of a dive from the Maniti. I mean, pick them apart in here. There was a bit of a side swipe there from the Vendaval Audi, which you're saying getting dragged down the road from because the brake pedals apparently weighs a ton. You don't want to press it. Why not just keep on the throttle? That'll help things right now. That'll spin her around, won't it? Just its IQ levels were dropping through the floor right there from a lot of the grid as they were trying to charge their way through.
Well, 5 minutes already on the boards, and I tell you what, 7/10 is the gap between Joshua Rogers and Julian Sonnen, but fastest lap powered by ATVO does go to the RHE Junior, a 1:28.306. Rogers has gone faster. It was a 2:57 last time around, but those pesky off tracks just making that lap not count as we look rearward from your race leader at the charging Audi. At Urano, who have not enjoyed the best of runs so far in this summer of GT3 action, Lewis, they sit very happily in 3rd and 4th position.
Yeah, doing really, really well here. Really nice start from them. Started from 4th and 6th. But just managed to pick their way through the carnage that was happening before them and managing to get their way up there. I will say from the 93, it was a really poor start from them, and that's kind of what slowed that line down and what's aided these two in making their way up. But, yeah, sure, other people are having their issues, but to be honest, why not? I mean, you go with the hand that you're dealt, and they've just picked it up really, really well.
So the Urano guys, I think, might have swapped around for a moment, at least on the timing screen. Lewis Najner back up into 3rd. Not sure exactly what happened there, but we'll say just a temporary timing glitch as across the line to complete another lap here. It's more chaos back in the pack. That's one of the Beeler Racing cars on the edge of the top 15. Working their way to try and close the gap. It is also opening up slightly at the front of your field. The top two are trying to break away from the Urano duo in 3rd and 4th. That Inex Ferrari is applying some pressure, and your championship leader, if anything at this point in time, Lewis, is dropping off the back of the top 5.
Yeah, I don't know if they've picked up some damage, even if it's more so mentally than anything else. It was a very, very chaotic start. Like, we don't see them that chaotic that much, and Dane Warren right in the middle of it, and also racing from the other side of the planet, so maybe trying to draw that one into it. Connection-based stuff, might be feeling a little bit less confident in that car, which, fair enough around here when it's so close, it's so tight, it's so high speed that you can kind of forgive him for backing out there a little bit, and I would suspect we'll see that 93 in about as early as possible to hand over to Charlie Collins to try and do the work. But right now they're coming under a lot of fire from the Course and Racing car behind. It's looking like a high pressure scenario, and Kova making some progress right now. They're up to 9th spot, and to be honest, aren't too far away from this.
But all this is really going to do is solidify a 3rd place spot in the championship, if anything, because, look at this action. Alta's trying to regain some positions around the outsides, trying to send it deep under the brakes is the Mercedes And this is not for points paying positions, we should point out. So Cooper Webster has a task on his hand to drag that car back towards the top 15 and then to hand it on over to Jordan Caruso and set him loose in the second half of this race. All sorts of action. You can see the damage to the front end. I don't think Alta's team boss will be too happy. Of course, very early in the morning. It's a Sunday drive. Contact between the Ferrari and the Mercedes in the background. Energy goes through the gravel.
That was a proper send, and obviously, you know, once you get into there, you're just going to keep sliding and sliding and sliding. It's hard to get back going, and that'll feel a little bit hard done by. I'm sure we'll take another look at that in a moment. I'm sure, but yeah, just rough. It is how it goes. R8G. Let's take another look. Is it just as they're coming across in the braking zone? It's a slight brush, but when you're trying to turn in, one driver's turning in a bit too early, the other one's trying to go for a later apex. That's just how it goes down at turn 2. I'd understand why you feel hard done by right there. Leaders, though, R8G Esports Junior are closing back down again on the number 91, so the race lead not done yet.
When will they stop being called the juniors? Because they've been very, very strong in this campaign. Julian Sonnen and Quintin Violate, of course. I'm sure Roman Grosjean is watching on with pride as once more that Urano car having some sort of technical issue that's dropping it up and down the timing screen, at least for now, still in 3rd position, but might not be making Dylan Shrivens and the Audi right behind too happy, and one has to wonder if team orders will come on through and swap those two cars around. Left side of the screen is that battle outside the points paying positions as we try and see if Altus can use that momentum from race number 1 to get themselves back into the top 15, as still that timing issue does occur for that number 90 car. Last time around, it was Sonnen that was slightly slower than Rogers. They are trading the lap times back and forth, and in terms of track conditions here, it is 37 degrees Celsius, so we talked about setups needing to be different between race number 1 and race number 2. I do wonder exactly what that means for some of these cars, Lewis.
Yes, especially as the track temperature is going to increase throughout this. You've got things that you can adjust pressure-wise and whatever. I don't think it's going to be a complete setup overhaul between the two races, because theoretically speaking, the same setup should work on the same track. It's not as if we're going from 25 degrees up to 55, right? There is a large increase of 10 degrees. We're up to 37 degrees track temperature now. But realistically, with you're tweaking your tyres, you're playing about with it in that sense, that should be enough to halt the issues. But you know, it's still those small things, understanding what you can do, and some teams may not know exactly which way to approach it. Some drivers and teams will approach it better than others, and right now I couldn't tell you which way it's looking best. Obviously the more you adjust your tyre pressures, in these temperatures you may start out quite fast and then get slower as the stint goes on, which to be honest is what happened with the number 91 VRS SCO Simsport in the first stint of the last race. Started out pretty pacey and then dropped off, whereas the R8G Sports Junior car is looking a lot, I would say a lot quicker actually. That's going a little bit too overboard, but they are looking, at least in my opinion, fast right now. This is a team, how sim racing is, isn't it, and motorsport itself, the highs and the lows. Maniti Racing, by the way, are in the pit lane. They were on a massive high last race. They would think how happy it would have been to cross the line as a victor. Now you're running outside of the points after a chaotic lap 1. Your heart will be right on the floor right now.
We saw a bit of goofiness from the two drivers as they came across the line to win for the Logitech Gioltas team. Now a little bit more reserved, a little bit more focused on whatever they can do. They sit now 14 seconds behind your race leader and almost 5 seconds adrift from the points, where Williams Esports Razor currently fly in that final points paying position. Taking a look at my timing screen, in terms of movers and shakers, you've got in the just outside the top 10, the Inertia Euro RC Mercedes up 7 into 11. Kevin Ellis Jr. up 12 into 14th position. And then in terms of big losers, of course, Cooper Webster 14 down from their starting spot, and the BS Competition Zebras 10 down from their starting spot. So kind of a tale of two races for some of these drivers, and really, as the track temperature continues to rise, you would expect the intensity to rise with these drivers. We were talking about the level of mental focus and the amount of physical strength, the increased physical demands that sometimes takes, and really some of these drivers will be relying on their experience to get them through the next 50 minutes here.
Yeah, you need to, like, this is where racing time and time again, in and out all the time, as there goes the switch back to the inside for Cooper Webster, is going to make up that position, fires it through down into turn 2 and moves up another one. in the iRacing platform, you've got the perfect opportunity to race over and over and over again. You can attack as many races as you want. Yes, sure, it may not be around here, but to be honest, racing is relevant no matter what circuit you're on. If you're understanding how to race on all tracks, then it'll surely help you here at Zolder. And there's plenty of opportunities to do that, and that's where you're seeing the full complete package from most of these drivers. They can perform regardless of the car. They're not too used to racing GT3s constantly, and so in this kind of series, for some of the drivers it might be a bit new to them, but they're taking to it very, very well. It's just how it is.
Cooper Webster drives Hyundai XLs in the real world, so a little bit different from what he's driving right now. We're talking about, of course, top-of-the-line sports car competitions where cars cost in excess of $500,000, and that doesn't include the spare parts and all the extras that you would need to get you through a full season of GT3 competitions. Of course, an XL is a 1.5-liter four-cylinder engine, if I'm remembering correctly, so very different to the grunt that this brand new BMW M4 GT3 does have. Battle for the race lead is still going back and forth as Rogers is trying to pull away from Sonnen, but you can see the RHE Junior is really not letting up the pressure. They are 2 seconds clear, though, of the Urano duo, squabbling over third at this point.
Yeah, looking really, really good for the Audi. I mean, even just so from a confidence point of view, they're looking really nice. And obviously, the way that it works is hopping out of the car after this stint. Sonnen will pass it over to Quinton Violette, who was on pole position, so clearly has pace, going against Mitchell de Jong, who might have had a little bit of a hit on confidence after race one and the amount of time that Logitech Gialtas Esports was able to pull out from them. So there might be that playing into it a little bit, and Josh Rogers would probably more have expected to pull away in the earlier stages here. That hasn't happened, and it's kind of holding firm. But of course, we've still got another 10 minutes before the pit window opens. They need to make an impact now. Urano, Esports, HKM and the Huawei have not closed in on this group. It's gone out an extra couple of tenths as they're all just sitting amongst themselves. They are pulling out for the VRS Coanda car continuing as it's gone out another couple of tenths, so clearly the 93 not having the pace that the 91 does.
That Inex Ferrari, though, is lurking menacingly. 2 Ferraris in the top 10 at this point in time. Really, once again, it's a great mix of manufacturers in the top 10. It's Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini, Audi, Ferrari, Porsche, Ferrari, Audi, BMW, and then Lamborghini to round out the top 10. Mercedes in 11th, so really almost all of the manufacturers represented in this top 10. And of course now, the next time we'll get onto the track in a month's time will be from Monza. That is a totally different challenge to what we've seen in any of these first 3 races. Throw the form book out of the window, Lewis, because this triple header to kick us off, it really means there's not much time to prepare in between every race to try and correct some of the things that you may have thought you've done wrong. This is a month-long reset in effect for these teams as we head to another triple header to round out the season.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that, we spoke about this before yesterday as well, that any drivers and teams that have issues with the car, the format, maybe the things they need to figure out with their other driver, etc., there is the perfect opportunity to figure it out now, because we take a break for 4 weeks before we return. But once we return, once again, we're doing the same things that we have here. We're doing a triple header, and it's relentless. Every week you're coming back and thinking, oh God, I can't do this again. I can't do it again. I've got to find something. And when you're in a train of a high, right, say for example the VRS Sports number 93, where they've gone from positive to positive to positive, it's fine, you're comfortable, because we're in a confidence game right here. This is all about confidence, is motorsport, motor racing, sim racing, however you want to voice it. Whereas if you're on a low or a high, even into a low, say for example with Kova, where they started on a high and then they dropped off of it a little bit, and they've just not come into it with the same sort of volition and what we would expect from the Finnish outfit, that it's so easy to get out of it. Whereas when we go into that second half of the season, it is essentially like a reset, and you can attack once again. You can feel the confidence. You can maybe find something, a couple extra tenths. I think if you find 2 tenths in the setup in this series, which by the way is an enormous margin, but still, follow me here. If they find 2 tenths, that is the difference from starting from the mid pack, the back of the pack even, or starting from the front.
Of course, it's not that there's going to be no action for the next month. The VRS SCO 24 Hours of Spa will be on July 31st and August 1st. Sign-ups do close today, so head on over to sportscaropen.com if you want to enter yourself and to be part of the pre-qualifying to get yourself onto the 60-car grid. Here comes a move from the Ferrari in 12th place. Some damage to the front right. And indeed, there's a lot of beat-up race cars at this point in time. And if anything, someone like the Inertia Euro RC car that has worked its way up 7 positions, Lewis, that almost looks factory fresh from what I can see.
For now. Let's go with the for now, because you know what this track's like. You're bouncing over the curbs quite a lot. You can break a bit of it, and it's been intense. I mean, if you want to see a car that's not factory fresh, it would be the Logitech D'Altis eSports car, which has received a lot of damage on the front. It had a lot of damage in race 1, mind, but you know, that's just how it went over the curbs and stuff. This has been more from the carnage that happened down at turn 1. If you've got a fresh car right now, handing it over, it's something to hold up with pride and thinking, at least I've got through it cleanly. But to be honest, when we're talking of the damage that we're getting right now, it's a little bit of damage on the front end, a little bit of bent in here, a little bit of you know, damage there. It's nothing major, it's nothing extreme. It's nothing that's going to cost them lap time, realistically. So it kind of means something. It almost might mean that you're not really pushing it hard enough, are you?
Never know. I mean, well, we have seen on occasion some pretty beat-up race cars at the end. Even that Altus car at the end of race number 1 did have a bit of crunkled in front nose, but you always prefer to have a clean car than to have a damaged car, at least when you get into it, because you then don't have the necessarily understanding of what the car is doing differently as compared to what it was doing normally. As I think Kevin Ellis Jr. has gotten past the Valkyrie Esports BMW for 13th position, as the gap out front continues to be very, very close. About 0.6 of a second as Rogers is about to come across the line with 5.5 minutes left to go into the pit window. The Urano guys still holding pretty well, only 2.6 seconds behind your race leader, but there's a train of cars, and there's the championship leader in a bit of no man's land, and if anything, in danger of being attacked by the Core Sim Racing number 32 car here.
Yeah, look at that pressure from behind. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they've not tried switching over, although I'm kind of surprised. You know, whilst the pace is good, it's now starting to separate up in the leader. They'll know the pace of Dylan Scrivens in the Audi of the Urano car rather than Nazar in the Lamborghini. So you kind of get that. If you switch them behind now, then obviously you've got Jack Sedgwick to worry about in the Inex car directly behind. So they're not switching. They're not going to try and play the team game in that sense. But the top two are pulling away moderately convincingly from this pack. And Jack Sedgwick is now knocking at the door for the podium. For Urano, though, to respond, if they could genuinely pick up a podium in this race, bravo to them. But Inex will be just as hungry, especially after a pretty terrible run last round out at Barcelona. They had issues in both races.
A couple of new tracks on the iRacing service part of this schedule. You have, of course, Barcelona, relatively new when it comes to things in the iRacing service. We started at Hockenheim, very much a new track to the service, one of the first competitive races we've had there at this level of competition. And now, in the second half of the season, we'll visit the Red Bull Ring. For those of you who are watching, do let us know what tracks you'd like to see in future SCO Sprint Masters schedules. Of course, the Hungaro Ring is coming to the iRacing service hopefully later in 2021. That is such a fun track. I would love to see that. Have GT3 cars fighting side by side everywhere there. You can really make any pass you want at a track like that. It's all about momentum. Slightly different to a track like Zolder, but very much a fun one. Lewis, how about you? I mean, so many great tracks that iRacing is yet to add. I mean, we've got such a diverse 100 tracks plus on the iRacing service, but iRacing team is always trying to add more, and for GT3 cars, there are some really fun things still out there for us to get.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of tracks that we can attack. There's some bizarre ones that we can throw in there. Of course, I know new tracks that are coming. We've got Knock Hill on the way, which I'm pretty sure GT3 won't take too well to that circuit, so we'll ignore that one. That'll be good fun though. You know, you've got some. Again, it's nice to see some of the oddities. We're seeing Core and Inertia battle it out, and Core will go around the outside of that Inertia Mercedes. That's a nice move, just like Kevin Ellis Jr. in race 1. A bit of contact between the two departing the corner, and trying to get involved would be the Apex Racing car directly behind. But Saxon Ring, what about that?
Ooh, that would be a fun one, as Kevin Ellis Jr. almost gets sent into the deep stuff by the Valkyrie as we jump on board with that BMW. Still some side-by-side as Inertia Euro RC really squeezes Kevin Ellis almost onto the grass. Now trying to do the same into the final corner. Mercedes has the inside, but that becomes the outside for the next part of the chicane, and Kevin Ellis with another great move, and Valkyrie will take advantage. Williams almost makes it 3 wide across the start finish line. Inertia's down 4 positions in just a couple of corners.
And may well be another one as well, because Carnage are right there. Beeler are also a part of it. Williams Esports Razor going a little bit wide for that run through turn 1. They complete the move on Inertia. Beeler are right here. Patrick Heinrich knocking at the door, forcing Carnage into a dive. Might go a little bit too deep here at turn 2 and allow the Lamborghini to pick up the inside, but it wasn't done so. The gap for the race lead, by the way, is out now an extra 0.6 of a second. Josh Rogers is lighting this one up and is clearing away at the front end of the field, but the battles down in the mid-pack are absolutely enthralling.
And well, only 2 minutes to go until the pit window. You would have to think that Rogers will stay in that car for as long as possible before handing on over to his teammate. Who knows what RAG and the Urano cars will do. Kevin Ellis Jr., by the way, if he does get sent off into the gravel, is starting to get much more experience when it comes to controlling cars there. First round of the IRX Pro qualifiers was just this past weekend. Even though Kevin Ellis Jr. was unfortunately not in that first split, he was, I think, in the second split and swept that session. Pole position, won his heat, and then won the feature as well. Starting his qualifying campaign to try and get into another World Championship in very impressive fashion. Of course, 5th in the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. 4th last year representing the team RLL as they made their way into virtual sim racing competition. Of course, Kevin Ellis's teammate was Zach Campbell for that campaign. Campbell sits up in 10th position. The Apex Racing team did have a pretty strong run at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in the Lamborghinis, having a bit more of a difficult run here today. Of course, Kevin Ellis and his teammate Maxime Brient with a wonderful race number 1 to get to the podium, but it's going to be quite hard for them to get those type of points this time around as we look rearwards from Valkyrie. As here comes the charge from Williams Esports Razor.
Yeah, interesting to see the races back-to-back having such differing pace. They're just not with it as much as they were in race 1. It shows that qualifying is obviously very important. A couple of tenths different there can really make the difference in the race. I'm pretty sure the Beeler car in the background, by the way, got past the VRS Commander car just in the background. And there we go. We can see them switching on the timesheets as well for 18th spots as we look backwards towards the Williams Esports Razor car. This is what happened to Beeler. Oh, Patrick Heinrich, too much grass. Oh, there's going to be a lot of damage on the front end of that Logitech car. That Alphas Esports has received a fair amount there, and that's not good for them.
I was going to say let's stick on that replay because there was a second moment for Heinrich later in the lap as now side by side he goes with the RAG car. Inex and Coanda, your championship leader, down onto pit road just as the pit window opens. So it is going to be a swap around. Dane Warren will hand it on over to Charlie Collins as here we go. This is the crucial time to make sure you nail your pit entry.
Now, I'd want to see if we can go back and take a replay on board with a very specific car, which would be the Valkyrie at some point. I mean, obviously we'll focus on what is going on here, but the Valkyrie was so close to making contact on the rear end of Kevin Ellis Jr. on the entry to pit lane, which shows how dangerous it can be on that entry and why it's such a hard judgment call. It was exceptionally close, and that's why you don't want to pit directly behind someone. You want a decent gap so you can commit yourself to pit lane. Look at how tight this battle is. Again, incredible stuff to see them all separated by very much. Watch how close it gets. Whoa, yeah, you don't get much closer than that. You do not get much closer than that. It's tight. It's scary, that is.
And you did mention that would be one of our danger points coming into this race weekend. And, well, we almost saw the visual indication of just how dangerous it would be. The cars are rolling themselves off of pit road. Valkyrie followed by Williams, followed by Inertia is the order. So BMW, Porsche, BMW. We wait now and see when the rest of the field will come on in. I do not expect Joshua Rogers to come in until the very last moment. Still plenty of time to try and come down onto the lane. As far as I understand it, Lewis, you just have to make sure you're in your box and finishing up your driver change when the pit window closes. So you really can run it a lot closer than if the rule was you have to be out of the pit lane by the time the pit window closes.
Yeah, it's not quite as strict as that. I've seen some rules where it's a bit more. Oh, BS going around. Oh, that is contact with Vendaval, I believe, who are then in the barrier. There is something that's happened there, and I guarantee you that is someone trying to commit to come down pit lane, and then someone else not doing that. Yeah, not quite sure what happened there at BS competition. We're backwards either way. Let's take a look at it. Watch the Vendaval Audi behind this. Potentially they're coming down the pit lane. See, that's how you don't want to do it. We saw it done really, really well from Valkyrie, but that was a 0 out of 10 attempt.
And you made a joke about the IQ points earlier with some of the stuff down into turn number 5. I hate to say it, Vendaval, but a kind of a brainless move, if you ask me there, because that was never going to go the way. As we jump on board with the number 9 car, it will be Dakota Fripp taking over that machine. Going for a gap that never existed is kind of the way to describe that one, and then hard into the wall. And yeah, I think PS Competition is going to be pretty frustrated at that one, especially given that they had already been turned around at turn number 1. It's not been a fun day for the number 89 crew, but the Zebra will take this next month, I would guess, and recover and rebound when we head to the Monza track. What a fun race that's going to be. Drafting is going to be the name of the game. How much wing are you going to run? And Bila Racing Team off the track now for the 3rd time in today's race. Don't know if that was contact or maybe just getting a little bit wide in through the hairpin. Almost halfway through the pit window, and only 15 cars still yet to come down as the LEGO Technic car makes it 14 yet to come down. Interesting calls. Core Sim Racing also down onto pit road.
Yeah, counter to the previous race where I think in the first 5 minutes we saw pretty much everyone down except for 4 or 5 cars. This time it's very much the opposite of that. They're going the distance this time, and we'll try and push it a little bit further in the pit window. We've got another 6 minutes of it. It's obviously when we cross the 25-minute mark left to go in the race, the pit window will close. And like I say, some will push it to the limit, some will play it a little bit easier. I actually don't see the point in pushing it all the way to the very, very limit. Come on, just a lap or 2 early, just in case, because you never know what will happen. Say, for example, you push it until the very last lap, and I don't know, you're at Spain, and a Bila has come into the pit lane, and they've made an enormous accident in the pit lane entry, and you can't get in. Well, if you'd have come in a lap earlier, you'd have been all right.
Good point. And I mean, now I'm starting to think about the pit roads that we've got coming up. I've seen mistakes at Monza being made, and I've seen the pit road being blocked there. All of the tracks that we have coming, the Red Bull Ring after that, then we finish off at the Nürburgring sprint layout, the shortest track that we'll visit across the season. It'll be interesting to see exactly how things go there. RHG's down onto pit road. One of the Urano cars is down onto pit road as well. This is crucial. If Julian Sonnen can get Quintin Violate into that car and up to speed very, very quickly, he could apply the pressure to Mitchell de Jong as he comes out onto the track and tries to work himself back into his peak operating window.
And what's the most important thing for these drivers not to do in their first laps behind the wheel? Don't get a slowdown. It really affected the race yesterday, and you've got to make sure that that's not the case, that you're not that driver that's pushing it just over the track limits. We saw it even earlier today in the previous race where they run over, they get a slowdown penalty, and it really cost them the battle for what is now second position on the road. Dylan Scrivens with Jack Sedgwick directly behind. Whilst these battle, this is perfect for those that are presently in the pit lane. Sedgwick on the attack is going to try and sweep around the outside of Scrivens. Bobo says no thank you to that one, hangs on, but regardless of that, the side-by-side is costing them time, and to those that are in the pit lane now, they're almost guaranteed to come out well ahead of this.
If you're the Urano Esports HKM car, you might be pretty happy about that one, as the HKM car now being driven by Daniel Pastor, who was pretty rapid in race number 1. Let's see if anyone's down onto the pit road this time around. I think it won't be Rogers, it might be Scrivens or Sedgwick. In fact, neither of them is down onto pit road. And so about 3.5 minutes will be left to go. So they've got 2 laps to decide when they want to come in here.
Yeah, and they've got plenty of time, so I'd suspect they'll be in the next lap by, or at least one of them. And this is the thing, is that Sedgwick sat behind and is basically waiting for Scrivens to bite, because again, you don't want him to bite earlier and then have to slow down and then accelerate again and then slow down again on the way into pit lane. Logitech Gialtas Esports are the next ones to bite and come down pit lane. So for Cedric, he's almost in the hands of the Urano Esports camp to see when they're going to come in, because he's desperate not to lose time right now.
So here comes race winner number 1. Pretty disappointed with how race 2 has gone, but never say never. There could be good points on offer, and my suspicion is they'll be knocking on the top 10 and the prize-paying positions come the end of this race weekend, heading into that summer break. Out gets Cooper Webster, in gets Jordan Caruso, as I think now we wait and see. Is this the lap that Urano and Inex come down? I think Rogers is pretty comfortable. He should be able to get that one more lap in without any sort of drama, but But these two cars, they're a bit closer. Now about 5 and a bit seconds adrift from the race leader. They may elect that this is the time to come down. And in fact, if I'm Rogers, I don't necessarily want to risk it. Here he comes. He's coming in. It will be De Jong to get into the car. Now we wait and see what the pace is like from Violate.
Gribben staying out though. Jack Sedgwick did come in, so did have to brake and be a little bit more cautious. So for Urano Esports, they will take the lead of the race very, very briefly indeed. Apex also staying out behind them. Josh Rogers, though, as you say, into the pit lane. We'll be handing it over to Mitchell de Jong. And what is the gap going to be between them and the RH Esports Junior squad? That is the real question right now. I think, obviously, I'm going to take the wild guess that it's still going to be the VRS SCO Esports 91 that's going to be ahead. It's just by how much, and will that gap come down? Mitchell de Jong's pace in race 1 wasn't, I mean, obviously wasn't bad. It's Mitchell de Jong we're talking about, but it wasn't exceptional.
So we have to wait and see. The Urano car is left by himself. The two Apex Lamborghinis, 99 and 98, second and third. Let's see how they'll come out in regards to the rest of the cars. You can see 90 seconds is left in this pit window as there goes de Jong to roll himself off. Where is Quintin Violate in relation to the race leader? There he is coming across the start-finish line. De Jong will have a bit of a gap to now work with, but the question is, how long will it take him to get up to pace? Because Violate was very quick in qualifying.
Yeah, very fast indeed. Obviously, pole sitter in this one, but wait and see whether they're going to be able to hold the gap. And I'd argue that the 91 on paper should hold the gap, but I'd say that gap's a lot larger than it was pre-pit lane. I think they've definitely pulled out something. I did wonder if the RHG junior car was slow in pit lane, because they didn't leave pit lane that far ahead of Daniel Pazda, and kind of seems like that is the case, because they haven't exactly pulled an enormous they haven't closed in on the 91. They've not pulled an enormous margin on the cars behind. I think they've lost time here. The gap's 3.6 seconds.
I think you're right. It doesn't necessarily reflect in the pit lane time because it's very marginal between all of those cars. It must have just been on that entry getting into pit road where some time was lost. Of course, Quintin Violate's teammate Sonnen wasn't behind any car that close, so he wouldn't have had to check up for Rogers at that point in time. There goes Bobo up on the jacks to hand his car over to his teammate. Nicholas Laubisch now behind the wheel of the 95. Here comes de Jong across the start-finish line as we'll wait and see where the Urano Audi is going to feed out in relation to not just RHE, but his teammate as well. There he goes, rolls himself back up to speed. Of course, a very difficult pit exit here for drivers to work their way off of. There goes Violate, he's already clear. There goes Pastor. So, if anything, Nicholas Laubisch has lost out as a result of that long pit cycle here.
Yeah, it was slightly longer in pit lane. They were actually in pit lane for 2 seconds longer than Pazda. But either way, you've got to remember that the 95 and the 57 did also battle it out for quite a bit, which would have just cost them a couple of tenths here and there. And so it might explain where some more of the time has gone. Battle down the final points paying positions. You've got the two VRS Coanda Mercedes in 13th and 14th, and Ricardo Rico. Oh, that was a bit of a dive. Oh, whoa, that was careless. Yeah, I'd be flashing my lights as well. Inertia, not happy with that one bit. A bit just careless.
And then sends it really deep. Forces, I think, the inertia car to lose a couple more positions as a result of Coanda going wide. It's a bit careless and not the first bit of contact we've seen from Rico here today. So this, of course, is for points paying positions, and really, these are crucial points in the championship because every single one of them counts, and this is about getting momentum heading yourself into the summer break. You want to make sure when you come back for that second triple header to close things out, you are in the best position possible to make some spots up.
I mean, I've always said, like, contact is never necessary, but let's watch this. Sorry, it's baffling to me. The contact is never necessary, right? You do sometimes see it through corners and whatever, and there's sometimes where it's understandable. There's two major positions where contact is completely not understandable. One of them is Connery Maverick's favourite one, which is a terrible rejoin. So I won't hold that in too much angle, though they do very much annoy me. But contact on a straight line, how do you make contact? It's a bit of road that continues in one direction. How do you make contact on that? I don't get it.
I don't either, and I mean, I couldn't even control myself. I thought that was going to end up with a track blocker coming in towards turn number 5, so we'll have to wait and see. Here's the replay on board with Matti Kaidasoa, who I think will get the worst of this, and you'll see it's almost contact there heading in through turn 4, and this is... I mean, it's not NASCAR where you'll have a live spotter telling you exactly where everyone is, but everyone in this iRacing service gets that automated spotter, so he should have known if I'm thinking correctly that car was coming down is inside it. Well, for the Inertia Euro RC car, just kind of forced off the road as a result, like I said, of that Coanda checkup, and loses that extra position out of the points-paying positions. On board with RAG, take a look at this.
Yeah, picks up both positions. Williams Esports Razor also doing fantastic work to pick that up, and Alexander Hort is also doing the same thing. Like I said, you got mirrors for a reason. You can see the momentum and check that from the car behind. It was just a bit of a careless bit of driving from Rico, and I'm pretty sure that Race Control will not look so fondly on that. Either way, it's happened now, and they move on. They're inside the points. They're battling out with the other VRS Commander car for 13th spot, and Williams Esports Razor, after gaining those couple of positions, are now in 15th and in that final point.
So, 3.7 seconds is the gap out front. We were wondering if Mitchell de Jong... Oh, is there going to be further issues for Inertia?
Oh, that's... Okay, see, that's unacceptable.
No, I think that's just race done. I think that was Kaidasoa saying, I'm done. But no contact there, Lewis. That's the good thing. I think what he forgot is that RaceSpotTV has an all-seeing eye. And if you do anything, we are going to catch it and show it to the world. Back to the point, though. Gap for the race lead, 3.5 seconds. De Jong has responded to any sort of concerns about his pace by extending the gap very slightly, and if anything, Via Latte is having to defend from Daniel Pastor.
Yeah, Urano Esports HKM are right there now, and we were wondering if, maybe if they get a podium, then they'll have a good day. They'll be having a great... They want second. They don't care about the single podium. I mean, hey, to be honest, Laubish isn't that far behind. That maybe they could see the double podium. If they get onto the podium, though, great stuff from them. Inex as well, that are running in 5th. Yaltin behind the wheel right now. He'll be close. He's going to be very, very close to grabbing a podium, which for them, for their season so far at Inex, it's not been amazing. They've had some bad rounds, but they've got good pace. Those two, between Jarl and Jack, they're a very fast team. They're a very fast outfit, and I see no reason as to why a podium here, and maybe even across the rest of the season, is out of reach. If the Ferrari is only going to be good at one track, though, you've got to take advantage of it.
I will say, Yaltian, more known for, an eNASCAR driver, 3 seasons, a couple of second-place finishes to his name. Now trying to compete here in the GT3 car. Very different kind of a proposition, if you ask me. The same sort of challenge that someone like Mitchell de Jong is having to deal with, of course, competing in that eNASCAR Coca-Cola series here in 2021. Is Yaltian, who went for a bit of a flip last time around at Barcelona, doing a good job to put that in the past, and solid points on offer from Inex Racing, not just here in race 2, but of course, in race 1, they were looking very, very strong. The Ferrari, like we said, hasn't been so strong in the first couple of rounds, but it is notoriously strong at the Nordschleife, the one place where, despite the fact that you have a lot of corners, I think people misunderstand, Lewis, the importance of straight line speed. There are so many long runs that if you get the power down nicely, you can build up your momentum throughout the almost 8.5-minute lap in the 24-hour layout. That might bode well heading to Monza.
Yeah, maybe so. A lot of straight lines. To be fair, even at the Red Bull Ring, there's a lot of more medium-speed corners which will affect them badly, but the high-speed straights and stuff may work out in their favour. We'll say with Jarl Time, he's... you're saying the eNASCAR Coca-Cola. I will say he is probably one of the most experienced drivers that you'll come across in sim racing. Has raced in, pretty much anything that you can think of, whether it's oval racing, whether it's open wheelers, whether it's GTs, supercars, random stuff on LFS, whatever it is. He's been in sim racing for the best part of, I think, 15 years, and has raced at the front of most of the stuff that he's raced in throughout that time, and has been able to get the most out of most cars. And as he's got a bit of a fiery temper behind the wheel, but has a lot of experience to fall back on, which we've spoken about before.
Speaking of LFS, our producer Hugo Luis can attest to that experience that Jarl has. He's actually raced against him, almost a decade ago. It's crazy to think how far sim racing has come, not just in the last 12 months, of course, with the big boom that we've seen with so many drivers from the real world getting their hands involved with sim racing activities, but from those early days when You had your Live for Speeds and all the other simulators that were the name of the game. Now you have a very different sort of an environment, and look at how realistic things look now as well. The car movements, especially here on iRacing, it really does look like the real thing now, Lewis.
Yeah, and the ability for them to nail lap after lap. I'm not saying that back in the day that there wasn't quality drivers, because of course there was. I've got to be nice, because Hugo's, like I say, he could definitely hear everything that I'm saying, so I've got to be careful. Back in the day where you'd have 7, 8, 9 drivers that were on the very, very limit, that were incredible, and then the odd one sort of moving up there now. These days you've got the field that is separated by such a small margin, and it's so tight in sim racing these days, and that's courtesy of, like you say, the big sim racing boom that we've seen recently, of just more and more drivers coming into it, and of course the I wouldn't say the lack, as Ricardo Rico's dropping down a couple of positions now, and outside of the points as R8G gain that one, and they'll dive it to the inside once again. There might be contact here as they run towards turn 4. Ricardo Rico desperately to hang on to that final point in that number 23 Carnage competition car, but R8G want to say something about that, and I'm pretty sure as well, I don't think that Bieler or VRS SCO want to walk away with this empty-handed. Side by side up towards turn 5 never really works out, and Rico sent that one in to try and gain it, but will be slow off the corner. R8G's Porsche, we're going to have 3 wide, potentially Kronka though, didn't want to go to the outside, didn't want to make it 3 wide. That run down the hill, they're all going to hold on to their current positions. It's actually Bieler that's sending it in.
Oh, they get it wrong. That'll be a slowdown for sure. Does that open the door to the cars behind? It will be Kronke first who wants to try and get on through, but Mac Backham in that Lego Technic car might also try and see this as an opportunity to pound. I will say 3 wide in through turn 6 is a bit more difficult in these GT3 cars, just because they're a bit wider than the GT4s that of course took to the track yesterday in the VRS SCO Sprint Challenge, which we have live on a Friday night. But for whatever reason, that slowdown penalty that Bieler had has not cost them too much time, and the RAG Porsche is searching for a way past that pink BMW. It parks it on the apex, nothing doing for now. 15 minutes left to go.
Maybe they didn't get a slowdown penalty. It would have been damn close for them too. Same with the Carnage car, because they were over that curve by quite a bit. Late move over to defend and hold it to the inside through turn 1. This is all over a single point. Imagine if there was more on the table for them, but they are battling it out very, very hard. And look at that dive from the Lamborghini. Poor Sven Haase is on the scene and is not content with walking away, like I say, empty-handed. And that's the difference here. It's a point versus absolutely nothing.
Ooh, Yaltien has lost a spot to Oscari Rene for 5th. So the Ferraris are squabbling it out. They're still 2 wide, 2 deep heading into turn number 5. That settles down, at least for now. Of course, the Coanda and the Lego Technic car, their teammates. You have Hyper Mac Backham behind the wheel of the 92, at least for now. Ooh, that Porsche's looking all over the shop, trying to get on past the Lamborghini, but nothing doing, at least for now. This is really intense stuff, but of course they've got to remember, none of these guys are scoring points right now. They've got to close in on Ricardo Rico in front.
Yeah, this is almost no point in fighting right now. Just stay in line and let Sven Haase, who we know is quick, just try and close down on the BMW. No point and no sense in fighting that hard. Not sure what happened to Jarl Time, but they are, I think, might have had a slowdown or something in that vein, because now the gap was right on the back of the Urano Esports Huawei car. Now 3 seconds arrears of that, so I'm assuming there might have been something in that vein that's happened.
We'll have to try and wait and see, as there's the Porsche getting very slightly. Kronke will look to the outside across the start-finish line and in towards turn number 1. One car is going to get past, and I think that Porsche has said, I don't need to fight too hard right now. The one thing that I've just remembered here, Lewis, is Ricardo Rico, after having some contact, is probably in line for some sort of penalty. So if Sven Haase stays where he is, that will be 15th position and 1 point to his name.
We've seen Race Control get involved with various penalties this season, and you can even have it with instant points. I spoke about this a little bit earlier, that we've got a high instant point limit, but it's not necessarily that the instant points are then free to attack. I don't think there is actually an instant point limit in this. And that doesn't mean that you can just abuse whatever you want. If you pass a certain threshold, which I'm pretty sure is 20 instant points, then you get a 5-second time penalty, and every 5 instant points you rack up is an extra 5 seconds, if I remember correctly. There was a 5 seconds for the next 5, and then an extra 10 seconds for the next 5, and so on. I'm not actually sure what happens past that point, because realistically you shouldn't get into that level, but it's in a sense, there's a manually operated instant limit from that point of view, rather than just the standard you're going to get a drive through because you've breached the instant points to that level. Interesting way, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of drivers here that are on the higher end of that limit.
Yeah, and I forgot about that. By the way, for the race lead, it is down below 2 seconds. So I'm not sure what's happened to Mitchell de Jong, but the pace has dropped off, and not just Violate, but Daniel Pastor is being dragged into the mix for a race victory here. And this is very intriguing when it comes to the championship picture.
Very, very much so. The 91 at the moment are doing a really, really solid job. Where is the 93, by the way? 22nd. What happened to the 93?
Good spot. I am not even sure, and I'm going to have to go look now if Charlie Collins has had to come down onto pit road twice. Could it have been some sort of a speeding penalty? I don't think so. In fact, it was a very long trip down onto pit road. 1:11.3 was the time, just stationary in the box. They lost about 40 seconds in that cycle.
Right, there we go. So I hadn't even picked up on it now. So their good run is coming to an end. They started the season being first and second for the first 4 races. It was first twice, second twice, and now very much falling afoul to that. And that 30-point lead, by the way, is now going to switch. And if I'm doing my maths correctly, if the 91 is to win this race, then based on that, they'll take the lead of the championship by about 4 points. So halfway through the season, I said about the reset. Well, now you've got to really hit it.
Ooh, I like this. I like this indeed, but 11 minutes to go. Don't count out Quintin Violate from mixing up that championship picture, because if Violate gets on pass, all your math goes out the window, Lewis, because it would still be the 93 in the championship lead.
There's a lot to play for here. It's a proper nail-biting scenario. You've got this is the thing, this is the difference. You've got 2 teams that are looking to make a name for themselves, to rebound from a not-so-great season, that are looking to take an important win. You've got one team that's looking to respond from a pole position that they lost the lead down at turn 2. And then you counter that with a 91. They're looking to get a championship. They're looking to get $7,500 for winning the championship. Yes, I get it. It's the 91 versus 93. They're 2 teammates. They can, whatever. But hang on a minute. You still want to win the title. You don't want to just say, oh, it's fine because we'll just battle it out with them later or whatever. You've got to evaluate risk. And I don't think there are many teams better on the grid at evaluating risk, many drivers better on the grid at evaluating risk than Josh Rogers and Mitchell de Jong.
This is going to be fun. It's all just shaping up perfectly. I mean, after the first couple of rounds, we kind of thought the 93 was in the prime position to just continue their good momentum. I mean, didn't finish outside the top 2 in the first 4 hours of competition. It is looking very, very different. 10 minutes left to go as we get to that crucial portion of the race, and the lap times recently have kind of trended in the favor of the Audi, and you can see the mistakes are kind of coming from Mitchell de Jong as he kicks up a little bit of gravel. Not sure if that's necessarily on purpose or if that's just going to slow him down very slightly. This is fun, and this is intense, and this is what Zolder sometimes delivers. It's not all about the side-by-side action, it's about the changing momentums, the way the tide will shift in favor of certain drivers. In terms of track temperature, Lewis, not sure if you've been tracking it, it's been holding fairly steady at 38 degrees Celsius. That RAG Junior car is very much enjoying the Belgian summer.
Yeah, it really is. Of course, unfortunately for Belgium at the moment, they're going through, and same with Germany, this entire region, going through a very, very harsh scenario. So it's good that we've got it in a virtual sense where we can race it, we can take to the racetrack and bypass the current world issues that's being featured at this place with all the flooding and whatnot. Really is a terrible scene to see, and I can tell you that's not the case of all of Europe, by the way, because we're in the middle of a heat wave here in England. It's getting pretty toasty right now. And to be honest, heat waves and stuff, this is actually an interesting thing. We've spoken about psychological side of things in sim racing and stuff. Heat is also another thing, because if you're racing, it's like 23 degrees in your room. You're comfortable. You're all right. Because obviously your heart races and stuff, and you start to sweat and whatever. When it's in the higher 20s, the lower 30s, and then obviously you count for your room temperature. You've got computers, you've got your screens, etc., etc. Temperature in the room can go quite high. It can get hot. It can get very sweaty in the room, and it can get very, very uncomfortable.
And of course, all of our thoughts are with those affected by the flooding right now in parts of Europe, and VCO and RaceSpotTV are actually going to be teaming up for an event this coming week to help benefit those who have been affected by that. So stay tuned on social media to learn more about the 6 hours of Eiffel, all to race against the flood. But of course, there is right now action out on track, and of course we'll be hoping to see what happens here with that gap now for the race lead under 1 second. We're also looking at this battle for the points paying positions, as Valkyrie is in 11th, being chased down by, you have the core sim racing Ferrari and the Mercedes of VRS SCO behind. That gap out front now 0.6 of a second. What is happening to Mitchell de Jong?
I genuinely, like this, these are things that we don't normally see, but then again, we did see something similar in race one. We did see the pace drop off towards the end of the stint. Now, you said it before, getting to someone is one thing, getting past them is another, although the pace that they have caught, I mean, confidence is definitely on one side here, and that is towards the RH Esports Junior car. They are feeling great right now. They are looking very, very hungry. And how much of a fight does Mitchell de Jong put up? How much risk is he willing to put onto the table? That's the major question. And to be honest, the RHG, the Urano camp, they will both know that they're that the 91 VRS Commander Simsport cars battling for a championship here, and so they can afford to take a little bit extra risk with them.
And well, I mean, do the math once more, Lewis. If the pass does happen, it would be 1 point the advantage that the 93 car has heading into those final 3 rounds of the championship. So there is a little bit of an incentive for the 91 to fight this one back, but they don't want to end up in the situation where they get 0 points and have to do all that work over again in the final three race weekends that we have on offer.
Yeah, absolutely. This is very, very intriguing. I mean, the 91 didn't start out the season in a great way. Hockenheim was not their round. It was all about the 93. The 93 was able to stay there at the previous round as well at Barcelona, where they looked so strong and were really taking control of this championship. But how quickly can things turn around? Because with 5 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock, things are looking a bit more positive for the 91. But for how much longer? It can turn around so fast. What could have been a huge gain can turn into a huge loss.
On board with Via Latte as we ride through turn 2, coming in towards that turn 4 corner where you can get the run down into turn 5, and if you're feeling really brave, send it down the inside and launch it over the curves. He's closing. You can see it's now a couple of car lengths between these two cars, and the young Frenchman who has recently joined up with this RHG squad is looking very confident, very focused on the task at hand. Just look at how these cars just handle that bump on the inside of turn 5. If the move is coming, Lewis, my suspicion is that Via Latte is looking pretty strong through turn 5 and turn 7. So either of these two spots is where the Audi may get on pass.
This is tense. This is very, very tense. You can see that the drive off of turn 7 is quite nice for Mitchell de Jong right now, which means that, as I say, this is the stuff that they'll all be weighing up right now. That a potential move down here is not looking so great, but the Audi's looking brilliant on the brake, so, you know, never know on that one. Again, it's trying to force a mistake out of Mitchell de Jong. It's trying to get him to overdrive a corner and then getting the switch back. That's what it's all about. And 4 minutes and 20 seconds, a good few laps to go, but they will tick away very, very, very quickly. Our large competition, Ricardo Rico, down the order. I'm pretty sure that car has just had a fairly large issue.
I think issue is putting it mildly. We'll have to... here's the replay. It's Bila Racing Team down the inside at turn 7, and hard to see from that angle, but kind of looks like the door was slightly closed. Bila Racing was kind of trying to get to the apex, and we'll have to take a look at the aerial look, maybe potentially to pull that one apart. But 3.5 minutes left to go. We're only looking at maybe 3 laps left, so about 12 kilometers. Mitchell de Jong might be able to hold on here.
Yeah, a little bit too wide there for the Audi of Via Latte. Not a chance here at turn 5. Remember that every corner that you go through... Oh, that's bad. That's a pretty big mistake there. I think that might just be enough, though, for him to hold on, but took way too much curb there at 5. Is this going to be the opportunity for the RHG Esports Junior car? They're not going to get many options and many opportunities around here. There's one to tick off. Every corner that goes by is an opportunity that you miss up, and those build up very, very quickly. 3 minutes turns to the checkered flag. Like I say, very, very fast around here.
It might be a similar situation to what we saw with Altus in that second race of the opening weekend, where they were close to the incident limit and didn't want to push their luck too much. You can see both de Jong and Via Latte are focused on the task at hand. It is a very important task. It will be 2 laps to go this time around, And here it comes. Here comes a momentum from Violate, but a little bit too far back in towards turn number 1. I did say turn 7 would be the place that he might get it done. Urano are being dragged into this fight as well. It might not be 3rd and 4th. It might be 1st and 2nd if these two come together.
Penultimate lap of the race, so it's the second last time they'll be seeing all of these corners tick on by. You could see there that the intent from Violate into turn 1 was diving out, not obviously to make a move. I'm sure we've seen this time and time again. It's a dive out to fill the mirrors. It's trying to get Mitchell de Jong to focus more on what's happening behind rather than ahead. And right now, Mitchell de Jong just needs to be hitting his racing line because it's a hard track to pass at if you don't make a mistake. That's a little bit better through the chicane there of turn 5. Violate knows it. Is there going to be a move down into turn 7?
You are starting to see, I think, a little bit more intensity from the body language of that Audi. He knows that he is running out of opportunities. He knows he's running out of time. In towards the hairpin for the penultimate time. It is a VRS Coanda car that leads, but it is not your championship leader. It is the 91. His fastest lap of the race goes to Phil Denez. He has come down onto pit road recently to just get some fresh rubber, and I think having a bit of fun to close things out. He is the final car running down in 23rd position. Here we go, though, Lewis. 4 kilometers left to go. It is a race victory on the line.
And a 4-way fight as well, because the number 95 Urano Esports Huawei Audi that is basically sat there, Nicholas Laubish, they are all separated by just over a second. 4 cars to battle it out for victory here in the 6th race of the season. We approach the halfway point of the season. There was a bit of a send to the inside from Violate. You can see there the way that he was talking. I think that might have been a bit disappointment because now the Porsche's built a gap.
And now Violate looks in his rearview mirrors because Daniel Pastor is saying, I can take second away from you. It is now into turn 4. The lights are flashing. That Lamborghini is charging, trying to get on past. This is where de Jong has been weak the last couple of laps. But like you said, it's a 0.6 of a second advantage in towards the braking zone of turn 5, braking just after that 100-meter board, riding themselves over the curves. I think this is done for the race lead. The question is, can Pastor try and get past for second?
I agree. I think it might just be a little bit too much unless there's a mistake from Mitchell de Jong. It was not the place to be looking for a move at turn 1. You know where this car's strong. We were saying between 5 and up to 7. That's where the Audi was looking very, very good indeed, but just went a little bit too early, got a bit too eager, got a bit too involved in the fight, threw it down the inside. Not enough. Is there going to be a move from Urano? No, it's not. I think the 4 of these are going to hold it this way up towards the line, and VRS Coanda are in prime position.
Well, the championship has taken a swing here as we reach the halfway point of the season. The 93 car was the championship leader coming into this, but it's the 91, Joshua Rogers and Mitchell de Jong. They take their second victory on the season. They move themselves in the championship lead as we have 1 month before we'll return to 2021 VRS SCO Sprint Masters competition live from the Circuit Monza. You could see a little bit of a relief on both of their faces there for de Jong and Rogers. They knew just how close that was, Lewis, to losing the race victory.
Yeah, it was tight. I mean, we'll have to catch up with them to find out what exactly happened. Bieler will cross the line, taking the final points paying position. So for the other VRS Coanda cars, it's really not gone very well for them. Just not the round that they would have wanted. Just 2 cars in the points paying positions, being the race leader and the VRS Coanda 18. But right now, that was important. That was very, very important for them to win. They won at the last round, of course, round number 4 of the season. They've won at round number 6, and now start to take control.
Halfway through the season, it has been a wild ride so far. A reminder that even though we'll be away for a month before we head to Italy and the Circuit Monza, we have the 24 hours of Spa powered by VRS and SCO. $10,000 of prize money on the line. You can visit sportscaropen.com to get yourself entered. Here are your unofficial race results. Of course, Race Control has a lot of things to go and unpick, including all of that carnage on the start. It's Mitchell de Jong and Joshua Rogers that takes the checkered flag. Only half a second between them and the chasing Frenchman of Quintin Violate. What a day for the RAG Junior squad. They show just how quick they are, and they are the bright lights that I think RAG is going to be looking at for the years to come. Urano 3rd and 4th. Great qualifying performance for them. Actually gets converted into race results and points on the board. The 90 and the 95 will be thrilled with that. Ferrari's in 5th and 6th. It's Oscari Rene that got past Jaltien in the Inex Racing number 57 with about 15 minutes left to go. They're about 6 seconds adrift from the tail end of the leaders. Jamie Fluke, the Apex Racing team, the 99 car, up there in 7th after the 98 got a 3rd in our opening race of the weekend. Antiola in 8th with Maxime Briant in 9th. Daniel Ferguson rounds out the podium position. Not the podium positions, the top 10, excuse me. A bit of disappointment the last couple of rounds for them. They'll be thrilled with some solid points on the board. Valkyrie in 11th with Corsim Racing's 3rd car down in 12th. David Williams gets their Mercedes across the line in 13th with Lafuente and Haase taking those final points paying positions. Martin Kroenke just misses out. It's half a second between Bila Racing Team, Euronics and the VRS Coanda come the end of the race. Mac Backham 17th, Alexander Walters in 18th for the second of the RAG cars, with race number 1 winner Jordan Caruso and Logitech Gioltas Esports down in 19th. They will be disappointed given the pace that they showed. Ricardo Rico rounds out the top 20 with Energy Simsport and VRS Coanda. That's your championship leader coming into this race. But Charlie Collins and Dane Warrens will now be behind their teammates in the 91. BS Competition for the second race in a row. Some lap 1 carnage drops them to 23rd, but I'm sure Phil Denez and Felix Quernbach had a little bit of fun. Inertia Euro RC, one of our retirements, along with Dakota Fripp in that Vendaval Sim Racing Audi. 2 retirements on the weekend. I think Vendaval will be hoping that the summer break can restore their momentum as they head to those final 3 weekends. Tim Matska, Hendrik Kroes and Eric Goldner and Andre Melchers all retired from this race in what was a very interesting one, Lewis. And really, the championship is in a much different position to what we thought it might be at the start of this race.
Yeah, we were more expecting the 93 to sort of remain in control, but that was absolutely not what we had. Didn't start out the evening looking so great. Race number 1, they did okay, but not amazingly. They ended up crossing the line in 5th spot, but race 2 really fell away from them, and the 91 were there to pick up the pieces.
And so I think it is time for us to try and bring in some of these drivers for some interviews. Let's start with Joshua Rogers and Mitchell de Jong, and Lewis McLeod is standing by.
So, translating that one into a race victory, I want to speak to Mitchell de Jong first. A lot of pressure on your shoulders in the final moments of the race. Talk us through how you dealt with that one.
Yeah, like you said, super intense race. Josh did a wonderful job giving me a big gap before the driver swap, and I just did my best to get used to the car as quickly as possible. It's always really tricky when you have these weird tire strategies that everyone does. It was hectic. I made a lot of mistakes. Wasn't, too thrilled with kind of my driving there, but I'm so happy it was enough. It was getting really tight at the end. I'm really happy. We thought it was going to go like 41 laps. I'm happy that it went 1 short. That helped me a lot. So.
So we noticed this in race 1 in the earlier stages, and obviously it was fairly apparent in the final stages of the second race as well. Pace across the stint seemed to drop off a bit more than others. Was this down to your drive? Was it a bit down to the setup or the conditions?
I think a little bit of both. In the first race it was a bit cooler, so the tires kind of stayed on the car longer. In this one, it was a bit tricky, just kind of managing the right sides because. A lot of us, I think, went with the 2-tire strat. A lot of mistakes as well. Just having that pressure, getting closer and closer. You need to adjust your lines and whatnot. So, just kind of make it to the end. That's the key there.
Well, congratulations. We'll pass over to your teammate Josh Rogers, and obviously to focus on the final points of that race. When you're outside of the car, watching your teammate battle it out that hard, what can you do?
To be honest, just try and stay calm. I have full faith in Mitchell. He absolutely knows what he's doing. I was just trying to give just enough information, but not too much. So maybe, like in the end there, I noticed, at least in the first stint as well, that the Audi and the Lamborghini were quite strong through the last few sectors. So I felt like, that was important information for him to know, as that's an area where they might be able to attack a little bit more. Or things, whether it's damage or speed of the other cars. So awesome to be able to get the win here, and P2 and a P1 the weekend. Can't really think of any more than that, especially considering speed in the first one. At least was quite tricky. I think yeah, the balance was a little bit tricky carrying so much weight, but we made do with what we had.
So considering that the 93 has had issues today and how the championship's looking, we head into the halfway point of the season. We've got a bit of a break. What are the plans over the off season here?
Keep preparing, keep trying to be on top of things. Obviously there's a few other races that we're doing as well, so trying to manage our time well while it's the off season in SEO. I think for us as drivers, it's not really the off season. Obviously Mitchell's got NASCAR and some other stuff for me too. So, but yeah, we'll just try and prepare as best as we can. At the end of the day, that's all we can do, and do the best job we can. And yeah, I think obviously preparation is going to be important for that. So we'll use these few weeks that we have to prepare as best as we can.
Well, major congratulations to you either way. Fantastic driving, and congratulations on another win.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Right, after this, we'll drag straight in the our podium sitters from this one. They did so well through that race to apply pressure over the race leaders, and it was really intense stuff. A pole position as well. Let's catch up with the R8G Sports Junior SCO team. We'll go to Julian first. Fantastic to be a part of a battle against VRS SCO and Simsport. How did that one feel?
It feels great. We had a great race one. Quentin did a fantastic job at the start, gaining a lot of positions, and then in race 2, yeah, that lap was just crazy and put it on pole. So it was great to battle with such great team as Coanda and Rano behind and all those guys.
Barcelona was not the greatest round for you. You started out the season very well with a 4th place finish, and Barcelona kind of went a bit sideways, a bit badly. How did you recover from that to come back for a 4th and a 2nd place hit?
I think we were quite a lot more on the setup. I think we were gone in the wrong direction with the setup at Barcelona, and that's probably what cost us the race. And yeah, I think the Audi also was much better here than in Barcelona. Was a bit behind in Barcelona, so yeah, BOP helped us a bit, and yeah, we prepared better.
Over to your teammate in a fantastic pole position, Quinton, delivering the pressure at the end of the race. How was that for you?
That was really hard because when I saw Michel going out of the pit with like 4 seconds in front of me, it was like that was end for us, and then I saw that I was able to be back on him because probably he was a bit struggled with the car, because I heard that the Porsche was a bit hard on this track. And yeah, when I was back, I wanted to absolutely overtake him, but I was a bit triggered on the incident, and when I saw that it was almost impossible to overtake him, I gave up and let him in front of me. But it was really hard to be behind him, because there was the Renault behind me, and that was really stressful.
It did look pretty tough and intense out there. Now with that sort of form restored, is there any track over the final half of the season that you're eyeing up to contend on?
I don't know. I think that's possible, but I'm not sure.
Well, congratulations to you. Hopefully we see this form from you again.
We'll see on the next one.
Brilliant stuff. We'll catch up with the RHG, hopefully at another point in the season. We'll catch one final interview before we wrap up here, because we've got someone to jump in and talk to us. We'll go more so about race one here, because it was a fantastic effort for you. We'll go with Cooper Webster first, and a truly exceptional effort in the early stages in race one. Let's focus on the positives. How was the start of the evening for you?
Yeah, better than I expected ever before coming into this race. I started in practice when I think I went to the pole with a kind of a average lap, and I was thinking, oh, are they on race setup, or when I was on qual, because I only did laps in practice against myself, so it was not really anyone to compare against apart from Jordan. So going into qualifying, I just went off my reference lap and tried not to think about that the pace compared to everyone else, and it worked good. I think I did 3 laps that would have put me pole. So that was just better than I ever could have expected. And then Jordan did an awesome job at the start of the race. He just got a gap for me, and then gave me a margin to Josh in the last stint, so I could give myself some breathing room. But it was just amazing race. So super duper happy.
And over to Jordan. You had some a bit of a laugh, a bit of banter across the line. Looked like you were having a lot of fun there in race 1, but the highs and lows of sim racing, race number 2, all kind of fell away at the very early stages, courtesy of contact at turn 1.
Yeah, I was so excited after that first race. I definitely didn't expect that. But yeah, going into the second race, it was pretty unfortunate. Like, there sort of wasn't much we could have done. We tried everything we could to try and make a few spots and salvage the race, but we sort of had damage, and yeah, it was pretty frustrating driving around by ourselves down the back. But I think after the first race, like, the mood is still, we're all really happy. Like, I think we've sort of proven that we can run with the absolute best in the world. And yeah, that's a takeaway from tonight, I think.
Well, I just wanted to jump in and just say an enormous congratulations to dominate a race in that fashion. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, thanks heaps for that.
Thank you.
No worries. Hopefully we'll see you doing the same thing in the second half of the season. Junior, though, that wraps us up for another round. What a round it was.
The triple header comes to an end, and really, I mean, I don't know about you, Lewis. I'm not looking forward to a month without any sort of on-track action when it comes to the Sprint Masters. Yes, we'll have the 24 hours of Spa powered by VRS and SCO, but that's going to be a very different type of a race. $10,000 on the line. This has been a extraordinary run to start off this summer of action, and it will continue. Monza, the Red Bull Ring, and the Nürburgring to round things off.
Yeah, and any drivers that have left here with a bit of disappointment, most notably the likes of the 93, I've said before, you've got 4 weeks to prepare for the next round. Now, did get that really important note from Mitchell de Jong and Josh Rogers that it's our off-season, sure, and I know, like, even from our point of view, just because we're off doesn't mean we're not busy. There's so much going on, and they're racing so much on a near constant basis that they barely have time to breathe.
I did mention, for example, someone like Kevin Ellis Jr. making a crack at the iRacing Rallycross World Championship. The pro qualifiers for that started this past weekend. But before we go, Lewis, I do want to ask you for a prediction on the championship here, because it's really looking like the 91 versus the 93 in the form book. Kova might still be in the mix, but I think it's going to be a little bit tough for them. If you ask me, the momentum's on the side of the 91. We thought the young guns, the 93, would be the one to watch coming out of the first race weekend, but things are looking different at the halfway point.
Experience. You know that Mitchell de Jong and Josh Rogers, whilst we always expect them to be at the front of a field, they've been through highs and lows. They understand how to bounce back and how to return to form. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're just seeing them march back to the front, and I'm not necessarily surprised that the 91 have come back. I'm just surprised it's happened this early. It's just experience talking, and for them, like you say, momentum is absolutely on their side.
And how can you stop someone like Josh Rogers? He's been so dominant, not just in iRacing, but across of the competitions he's running, and we'll have to see if the second half of the season swings in their direction. But for now, I think that's time for us to wrap up and say goodbye. 3 back-to-back weekends to start things off, and what a ride it's been so far. You can stay tuned on RaceSpotTV to learn more about not just the upcoming 24 hours of Spa powered by VRS and SCO, but so many more competitions. Hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it to get notified every single time we go live, the great sim racing series that we get to cover. On behalf of the entire team at RaceSpot, my name is Arjuna Kangipati. I've been joined by the wonderful Lewis McLeod, with iRacing World Champion Hugo Luis down in the production booth, clicking all the buttons. Plenty more action coming up right after this. In just an hour's time, we'll be live with the penultimate round of the ISOWC as the Indy cars take to Elkhart Lake and Road America. Join us for that, but for now, so long and goodbye.